Imagine, if you will, the quality of the light. It is late afternoon, the sun dipping low enough to cast long raked beams through a high, arched window. The light is not white, but amber, thick with the golden haze of a quiet day coming to its end. In this beam, millions of tiny dust motes dance, a slow, suspended galaxy of silent matter. Watch them drift. They are weightless, timeless, swirling in the absolute stillness of the room. You're seated in a chair of worn, dark leather. It is soft, yielding to your weight, holding you in a comfortable embrace. Around you, rising like canyon walls, are shelves of dark oak, stretching up into the shadows of the ceiling. And on these shelves rest thousands of silent guardians, books, spines of cracked leather in burgundy, midnight blue and forest green, titles faded to a whisper of gold leaf. The air here is cool, contrasting with the warmth of the sun on your hands. But it is the scent that truly transports you. Breathe it in. It is a dry, sweet perfume. The aroma of aging paper, of dried tea leaves, of vanilla pods and almond blossoms. It is the scent of time itself preserved between covers. There is no rush here. The world outside has ceased to exist. There is only the light, the dust, the leather, and the heavy, comforting silence of the library. You are safe here. You are protected by these walls of stories. And as we begin to pull these stories from the shelves, I want you to understand something fundamental about this journey. You do not need to try to remember. Your subconscious mind is a vast library, far greater than the one you visualize now. It will absorb these 101 truths while you rest, filing them away in the quiet archives of your deep mind without you lifting a finger. You have no obligations here, no test to take, no expectations to meet. Just let go. Let the words wash over you like the slow turning of a page. And as we settle into this stillness, we find our attention drawn to that very scent filling the room, the perfume that defines a sanctuary of books. It is not merely a smell, but a chemical symphony. As books age, the compounds within their paper begin to break down, a slow, inevitable decay that creates something beautiful. The organic polymer known as lignin, the very stuff that makes wood stiff and trees stand tall, resides within the pages. Over years and decades, as the lignin encounters the air, it breaks down into volatile organic compounds. It releases specific molecules that our noses recognize as vanilla, benzaldehyde, which smells of almonds, and sweet, floral notes. When you hold an old book to your face and inhale, you're physically breathing in the slow, sweet decomposition of the forest that birthed the paper. It is the tree's final, lingering breath, transformed into the aroma of history. This specific, intoxicating bouquet has a name, a word that rolls softly off the tongue: bibliosmia. It is derived from the Greek biblion, meaning book, and osm, meaning scent or smell. It is a word that acknowledges that reading is not just a visual act, but a visceral, multi-sensory experience. While a new book might smell of crisp adhesive and fresh ink, a sharp, industrial promise of the new, an old book offers bibliosmia, a scent that neuroscientists have found triggers the limbic system in the brain, the ancient core responsible for emotion and memory. This is why the smell of a used bookstore can instantly make you feel a sense of homecoming, a deep, cellular relaxation that signals to your body that you are in a safe place, surrounded by old friends. This feeling of safety often leads to a desire to keep these friends close, to build walls of them around us. There is a Japanese word that captures this gentle habit perfectly: tsundoku. It describes the act of acquiring reading materials and letting them pile up in one's home without reading them immediately. Unlike hoarding, which implies chaos, tsundoku is a state of hopeful suspension. It is the creation of a personal landscape of potential knowledge. The stacks of unread books on a nightstand or a floor are not a to-do list, but a comfort object. They represent a physical buffer against loneliness, a stack of paper dreams waiting for the right rainy afternoon. To practice tsundoku is to surround yourself with the potential for travel, for romance, for learning, creating a nest of paper and ink that insulates you from the noise of the outside world. When we reach into that stack and pull out a volume from the distant past, our fingers might encounter a texture far different from modern paper. Before the widespread use of wood pulp, the most precious words were written on vellum. Run your fingertips in your mind over a page of vellum. It is smoother than paper, creamy and rich, with a subtle organic grain. Vellum was made from calf skin, prepared with painstaking labour, soaked in lime, scraped clean of hair, stretched on a wooden frame until it was tight as a drum, and dried under tension. The result was a material of incredible durability, capable of lasting for 1,000 years. It is said that the finest vellum is so smooth it feels like touching polished stone that has been warmed by the sun. It does not tear easily. It holds the ink with a crisp, high-definition clarity that modern paper still struggles to rival. On these smooth, pale plains of vellum, ancient artisans created not just text, but light. We call them illuminated manuscripts, but we often forget the literal meaning of the word, illuminar, to light up. These books were not merely coloured, they were engineered to reflect the candlelight of dark cathedrals and dim monasteries. The illumination referred specifically to the use of gold leaf. Craftsmen would apply incredibly thin sheets of beaten gold to the page, often burnishing it with a smooth agate stone or a dog's tooth until it shone like a mirror. When a monk turned the page by the flicker of a candle, the holy figures and the initial letters would literally flash with divine light, appearing to glow from within, turning the act of reading into a witnessing of brilliance. But gold was not the only treasure buried in these pages. To create the vivid, hypnotic blues that contrast so beautifully with the gold, artists needed a pigment more expensive than gold itself. They used ultramarine, a pigment ground from the semi-precious stone lapis lazuli. For centuries, the only source of this stone was a single remote valley in Afghanistan. The stones had to be mined, carried by donkey through dangerous mountain passes, and shipped across the sea to Venice, hence the name ultramarine, or beyond the sea. The rock was ground into a powder and kneaded with wax and pine resin to extract the purest blue particles. When you see a robe of the Virgin Mary in a medieval book glowing with a deep celestial blue, you're looking at the dust of crushed jewels, carried from the other side of the known world to rest on that page. The sheer value of these materials, the gold, the lapis lazuli, the months of labour, meant that books were once targeted by thieves, leading to a unique form of library architecture. In the chained libraries of the Middle Ages, such as the one that still exists in Hereford Cathedral in England, the books were not free to roam. Each volume was fitted with a heavy brass clasp and attached to a stout iron chain, which was then threaded onto a metal rod running along the shelf. To read a book, you did not take it to a comfortable chair. You took the chair to the book. Imagine the sound in such a library. Not the rustle of paper, but the soft metallic clink of chains sliding against rods, a sound that signified the immense worth of knowledge. These chains were not a sign of imprisonment, but of high honour, marking the book as a treasure of the community that must never be lost. Yet, even before the chained libraries of Europe, there were sanctuaries of knowledge in the deserts of North Africa. The oldest existing, continually operating educational library in the world is the Library of Al-Qarawiyyin in Fez, Morocco, and it was founded by a woman. In the year 859, Fatima al-Fihri, the daughter of a wealthy merchant, used her inheritance to build a mosque and a centre of learning. Imagine walking into this space today. You leave the dusty, chaotic streets of the Medina and step into a courtyard of cool, geometric mosaic tiles. The air is still and smells of cedarwood and old leather. There are iron doors, 4 distinct locks on the ancient book room, requiring 4 different keys kept by 4 different guardians. Inside rest manuscripts that date back 12 centuries, written on gazelle parchment, silent witnesses to the rise and fall of empires, protected by the vision of one woman who understood that books are the seeds of civilization. While the scribes of Al-Qarawiyyin were copying text by hand, a different revolution was quietly taking place in the East. We often think of the Gutenberg Bible as the first printed book, but it was preceded by centuries of innovation in China. The Diamond Sutra, a Buddhist text found in a sealed cave in Dunhuang, bears the date May 11th, 868 AD. It is a scroll, some 16 feet long, printed from wood blocks. Visualize the carver, sitting in a workshop smelling of sawdust and ink, carving the intricate characters and the beautiful frontispiece of the Buddha into a block of wood in reverse. Every line had to be perfect. The resulting print is a masterpiece of composition. The text itself contains a teaching that fits our purpose tonight perfectly. It teaches that the nature of reality is an illusion, a dream, a bubble in a stream. It asks the reader to detach, to observe without clinging, just as you're doing now, letting the facts drift by like leaves on a river. This river of printed words eventually swelled into a torrent with the invention of movable type. When Johannes Gutenberg printed his famous Bible in the 1450s, he didn't just want it to be legible, he wanted it to be perfect. He created a texture on the page that has never been replicated. The ink he used was not the water-based ink of the woodblock printers, but an oil-based varnish, rich with copper and lead and titanium. It sat on top of the paper, glistening, slightly raised, catching the light. The text was dense, 2 columns of 42 lines each, known as the 42-line Bible. To this day, the blackness of a Gutenberg Bible is startling. It is a deep, glossy obsidian black that has not faded in nearly 600 years. It stands as a monument to the permanence of the written word, a black anchor in the white sea of the page, holding fast against the erosion of time. That deep obsidian darkness of Gutenberg's ink leads our eyes to the very shape of the letters themselves. If you look closely at a page printed in the 1450s, the text appears dense, woven together like a thick, dark fabric. This is why the font was called textura, a Latin word meaning woven. It was designed to mimic the vertical rhythmic strokes of a scribe's hand, a style known as black letter. Visualize a forest of pine trees, their trunks straight and tall, standing so close together that their branches interlock, blocking out the sky. This is the visual sensation of black letter. It is a Gothic architecture of the alphabet, full of sharp angles and diamond shapes, devoid of curves, resembling the pointed arches of the cathedrals where these books were read. There is a heaviness to it, a solemnity that anchors the eye, demanding that you slow down, that you treat every word as a stone in a great wall. It is the font of authority, of permanence, a script that does not run or dance but stands its ground, rooted in the parchment like an ancient oak. But as the Renaissance dawned, the light began to break through this dark forest of text. The heavy Gothic script gave way to something lighter, something that breathed with the open air of Italy. This new style was inspired by the inscriptions found on ancient Roman ruins, the clean geometric capitals carved into marble triumphal arches, and here, in the transition from pen to chisel, we find the origin of the serif. Picture a stone carver in ancient Rome. He holds a heavy iron chisel against a slab of white Carrara marble. To finish a stroke, to make the end of a letter like an I or an L clean and sharp, he must tap the chisel at a right angle, creating a small finishing flare at the top and bottom of the line. This flare, this tiny foot that the letter stands upon, is the serif. When these stone letters were translated back into ink on paper, the scribes kept those little feet. They ground the letters, giving them a horizontal flow, a line for the eye to follow across the page like a horizon. The serif is not just a decoration, it is a memory of stone, a structural echo of the chisel's final tap, preserved in ink for 2,000 years to guide your eye effortlessly along the river of text. As your eye follows that horizon, you might notice that some words seem to lean forward, pressing into the wind of the future. This is the script we know as italics, and it too was born from a desire to mimic the human hand. In the bustling print shop of Aldus Manutius in Venice, around the year 1500, there was a need to fit more words onto the page, to make books smaller and more affordable. Manutius looked to the handwriting of the papal courts, a fast cursive script called cancelleresca. It was slender, elegant, and slightly slanted to the right, as if the letters were walking briskly. By cutting type that leaned, Manutius could pack the letters closer together without them touching. It was a space-saving innovation, a way to compress knowledge, but in doing so he created a typographic voice. When we see italics today, we hear a different tone in our mind, a whisper, an emphasis, a thought within a thought. It is the visual equivalent of leaning in to hear a secret, a slight shift in posture that signals a change in the current of the story. And as the letters leaned and compressed, the books themselves began to shrink, transforming from heavy objects of furniture into companions. Before Manutius, books were often folios, large, cumbersome volumes created by folding a sheet of paper just once. They required a lectern, a table, a dedicated space. They were immovable. But Manutius had a vision of a portable library. He began to fold the paper not once but 3 times, creating a smaller gathering of leaves known as an octavo. Suddenly, the great classics, Virgil, Horace, Cicero, could fit into a saddlebag or a pocket. Imagine the shift in human consciousness this allowed. A book was no longer a destination you had to travel to. It was a friend that could travel with you. You could read in a garden, on a ship, or lying in a meadow under the shade of a cypress tree. The octavo changed the relationship between the reader and the word from one of reverence to one of intimacy. It allowed the book to be held in a single hand, leaving the other hand free, perhaps to hold a cup of wine or to rest gently in the grass. And as you visualize that hand resting in the grass, feel the muscles in your own hands softening. There is nothing you need to hold on to right now. The book of the day is closed. The knowledge is safe. Your grip loosens, your fingers uncurl, and deep in your chest, a warm, heavy wave of relaxation rolls through you. In this state of quiet pause, we often need a way to mark our place without breaking the spine of the dream. We reach for a bookmark. In the early Middle Ages, bookmarks were not the disposable slips of paper we use today. They were intricate, permanent features of the book itself. Monks, reading heavy volumes that might contain different liturgies for different times of day, needed a way to find multiple pages instantly. They used a device called a register. Imagine a button of silk or leather, knotted at the top of the binding with several long, colourful ribbons cascading down like a waterfall of silk. Or envision the rotating bookmark. This was a marvel of medieval engineering, a small disc of parchment attached to a string. The reader could slide the disc up and down the page to mark the exact line where they stopped. And on the disc itself, a rotating wheel with numbers allowed them to mark which column they were reading. It was a GPS for the soul's journey through the text. These markers were respectful of the paper. They were gentle placeholders, silent sentinels that stood watch over the paused thought, promising that the story would wait for you, exactly where you left it, unchanged by the passing of time. Sometimes, however, the edge of the book holds more than just a marker. It holds a ghost. If you were to take a certain antique volume from the early 19th century, close it tight, and look at the side of the pages, the fore-edge, you might see only a shimmer of gold or a plain white surface. But if you were to take that book and gently fan the pages, bending them into a slant, a hidden image would suddenly materialize. This is the lost art of fore-edge painting. Artists would clamp the book in a vise with the pages fanned, paint a detailed landscape or a scene from the book on the infinitesimally small slivers of paper, and then release the clamp. When the book closed, the gold leaf on the edge would conceal the paint. It is a secret world that exists only in the moment of opening. Picture a scene hidden on the edge of a book of poetry, a misty grey image of the English countryside, a stone bridge over a quiet river, trees bending in the wind. It is invisible when the book is closed, invisible when the book is open, and visible only in the transition, in the fleeting moment between sleeping and waking. It is a reminder that beauty often hides in the margins, in the spaces we usually ignore, waiting for the right angle of light and the right gentle touch to reveal itself. This gold that hides the painting serves a purpose far greater than mere decoration. The gilding of book edges, that application of thin gold leaf to the top, bottom and side of the page block, was originally a shield. Paper is porous, it breathes, and in the drafty, dusty libraries of the past, dust was a relentless enemy. It would settle on the top of a standing book, and over years the moisture in the air would bond that dust to the paper, creating a dark, cemented layer of grime that would bleed down into the pages. Gold, however, is a noble metal. It does not rust, it does not tarnish, and it is incredibly smooth. Visualize the gilder at work. He applies a layer of red clay called bowl to the smooth paper edge, then floats a whisper-thin sheet of gold onto it. Once dry, he takes a burnisher, a tool tipped with a polished agate stone, and rubs the gold until it fuses with the paper, creating a solid metallic barrier. When dust lands on this mirror-like surface, it finds no purchase. A simple breath is enough to blow it away. The gold seals the book, wrapping the fragile thoughts inside a hermetic casing of eternal metal, keeping the pages as white as snow for centuries. Yet, even gold has its challenges in the natural world. There is a tiny, silent traveller who cares nothing for history or art, but only for the taste of the past, the bookworm. We use the term affectionately now for a voracious reader, but the original bookworm was a larva, often of the deathwatch beetle. These microscopic excavators are attracted to the dampness and the animal glue used in the bindings. They do not read the book, they consume it. They bore through the pages, creating a labyrinth of tiny winding tunnels. There is a strange serendipity to their path. A bookworm might eat its way through a volume of philosophy, drilling a hole straight through the word time on page 20, continuing through God on page 50, and exiting through eternity on page 100. They create a physical wormhole through the text, connecting disparate ideas with a tunnel of empty space. In some ancient libraries, you can open a book and see a pinprick of light shining all the way through the block of pages, a star in the firmament of paper. It is a reminder that all things are organic, that even the loftiest ideas are recorded on material that came from the earth and can return to it, digested by the smallest of creatures in the quiet dark. Sometimes, the paper is not eaten, but it blooms with the colours of age. Have you ever opened an old book and seen reddish-brown spots scattered across the page like a constellation of rust? This is known as foxing. The name comes from the reddish-brown colour of a fox's fur, but the cause is a slow chemical oxidation. It happens when trace amounts of iron or copper, left over from the metal machinery that made the paper, begin to react with humidity. It is literally the rusting of the page. But do not think of it as damage, think of it as a patina. Just as copper turns green and silver turns black, paper foxes. It creates a map of the book's life. Those spots are evidence of every humid summer the book has weathered, every damp attic it has slept in. A pristine, bleached page feels sterile, untouched. A foxed page feels warm, organic, alive. It has a texture to the eye, a variegated landscape of creams and russets that softens the stark contrast of black ink. It tells you that this object has survived, that it has absorbed the atmosphere of the world and still carries the story safely within its fibres. And at the very edge of that foxed page, we find the final texture of our current journey, the decaying edge. In modern mass-produced books, a giant guillotine blade slices the pages perfectly smooth. But in the days of handmade paper, the slurry of cotton and water was dipped into a frame called a decal. Some of the pulp would seep under the frame, creating a rough, feathery, uneven edge. For a long time, bookbinders would trim this off to make the book look neat. But in the 19th century, readers began to prize the decaying edge as a sign of authenticity. It proved the paper was made by hand, sheet by sheet. Run your thumb over a decal edge in your mind. It is not sharp. It is soft, fibrous, irregular. It feels like the edge of a cloud or the foam on a shoreline. It resists the rapid flipping of pages. To turn a decal edge page, you must be deliberate. You must pinch the soft, ragged paper and lift it. It slows you down. It asks you to savour the tactile sensation of the material. It is a boundary that reminds you that you are entering a constructed world, a place built by human hands, imperfect and beautiful. And as you feel that soft, feathery edge slip through your fingers, you feel the last bit of tension slipping from your own edges. The boundaries of your body seem to soften, blurring gently into the comfort of the bed, just as the ink blurs into the paper, just as the light blurs into the dark. There is no sharp line where you end and the sleep begins. It is all one continuous, ragged, beautiful drift. As we drift further, we begin to leave the physical structure of the book and enter the strange, silent language of its interior symbols. That soft, ragged boundary of the decal edge invites us to explore the hidden architecture of the book's very beginning, the place where the binding meets the first breath of the story. If you were to open a beautifully crafted volume and look at the inside of the front cover, your eyes would meet the end papers. These are not merely functional sheets of paper meant to hide the raw cardboard of the cover. In the finest traditions of bookbinding, end papers are the threshold between the mundane world and the sanctuary of the text. Often, they are decorated with marbled paper. Imagine a large, shallow vat filled with water and a gelatinous size made from seaweed. The artist drops vibrant oil paints, indigo, crimson, ochre, onto the surface. The colours do not sink. They float, swirling in oily circles. With a thin wire or a wooden comb, the artist gently rakes the colours, creating patterns that look like veined marble, or peacock feathers, or the undulating waves of a shallow sea. When a sheet of paper is laid flat onto this liquid dance, it captures the pattern perfectly, an unrepeatable moment of fluid motion frozen in ink. Opening such a book is like opening a door onto a hidden garden of colour, a visual deep breath that prepares your mind for the transformation that happens when you begin to read. This transformation is facilitated by the silent language of the page, the symbols that tell us when to breathe and when to pause. Among these is a character that has largely vanished from modern novels, yet it stands as a sentinel of history, the pilcrow. You may recognise it as the paragraph symbol, a reversed P with two vertical lines, but visualise its evolution. In medieval manuscripts, scribes did not waste precious vellum by starting a new line for a new thought. They wrote in a continuous solid block of text. To mark a new section, they would simply draw a small mark in the margin or between words. Originally, this was a simple C for capitulum, the Latin word for chapter. Over centuries, as scribes added decorative flourishes, the C grew a vertical tail and a double bar, becoming the bold architectural pilcrow we see today. It is a symbol of transition, a quiet command to the brain to reset, to acknowledge that one thought has concluded and another is about to bloom. It is the rhythmic heartbeat of the narrative, a visual pulse that has guided human reading for 1,000 years, ensuring that even in a dense forest of words, we never lose our way. And as we find our way through the text, we occasionally encounter a small star-shaped guide hovering above a word, the asterisk. It is one of the oldest symbols in printing, derived from the Greek asteriskos, meaning little star. In the ancient library of Alexandria, scholars used it to mark passages they found particularly beautiful or important. Imagine the night sky of the page, where most of the text is a steady, dark firmament, but here and there a tiny star twinkles. It is a call to look closer, to descend from the main path of the story into a deeper well of information at the bottom of the page. The asterisk is a bridge between levels of consciousness, the conscious flow of the story and the subconscious depth of the footnote. It reminds us that every word has a history, a root, a secret life that exists just below the surface, waiting to be discovered by those who are willing to pause and look down. And as you look down into the quiet depths of your own mind, you realize how effortless it is to drift. The stars of the page are fading now, replaced by a soft velvet darkness. Your breath is a slow, steady tide, pulling you deeper into the comfort of this moment. Yes, you are exactly where you need to be. The silence of that deep internal tide is echoed in a phenomenon known as the Library of Silences. In certain old monastic libraries, the architecture was designed to amplify the hush. The high, vaulted ceilings and thick stone walls were not just for structural support, they were acoustic insulators. Picture a long gallery where the floors are covered in thick, dark rugs made of heavy wool. The shelves are filled with books whose leather covers act as acoustic sponges, soaking up the sound of a footfall or a sigh. In such a place, the silence is not empty. It is heavy, almost liquid. It is a silence that has been cultivated over centuries, a layer of peace that has settled over the room like fine dust. To enter such a library is to feel the noise of the world, the clatter of carts, the shouting of markets, simply fall away, replaced by the sound of your own heartbeat and the faint, dry rustle of turning pages. It is a physical manifestation of the mental space that reading creates, a walled garden where the only thing that moves is the imagination. Within these quiet galleries, the books themselves sometimes carry a weight that transcends their size. There is a specific term for a book that is so large it requires its own piece of furniture, the elephant folio. The most famous example is John James Audubon's The Birds of America. These books stand over 3 feet tall. To open one is a physical act of devotion. You must stand over it, lifting the heavy leather cover as if lifting the lid of a great chest. Inside, the pages are vast plains of paper. Audubon insisted on this size because he wanted to depict every bird in its actual life-sized scale. Imagine turning the page to find a flamingo, its long pink neck curving across the paper, or a great blue heron, its feathers rendered in such exquisite detail that you can almost feel the wind through them. The elephant folio reminds us that some truths are too big to be contained in a pocket. They demand space, they demand our full attention, and they remind us of the sheer scale of the natural world, captured in the stillness of ink. As we contemplate the scale of the world, we might look toward the horizon of the page to find a curious decorative element known as a dingbat. In the early days of printing, a dingbat was a small ornamental piece of type used to fill space or separate chapters. These were not letters, but tiny, intricate pictures. A flourishing vine, a miniature bird, a pointing hand, or a stylized flower. They were the punctuation of the soul. Visualize a printer's tray, a wooden drawer with hundreds of tiny compartments. In one, the A's, in another, the S's. But in the corner, there is a compartment full of these ornaments. They are made of lead or brass, cold to the touch, but they bring warmth to the page. They are the visual size of the printer, a way to add a touch of grace to the mechanical process of type. When you see a small ornate leaf at the end of a chapter, it is a signal of completion, a tiny, silent celebration of the journey just finished. It is the visual equivalent of a gentle pat on the shoulder, a well done, whispered by the ghost of a printer who lived 400 years ago. This sense of connection to the past is nowhere more profound than in the presence of an incunabulum. This word, derived from the Latin for swaddling clothes or cradle, refers to books printed in the very infancy of the press, specifically anything printed before the year 1501. These are the toddlers of the book world. When you look at an incunabulum, you're looking at a technology trying to figure out what it wants to be. They often lack title pages. They frequently have no page numbers. They are raw, experimental, and incredibly precious. Imagine the parchment of an incunabulum. It is often thicker than modern paper, with a slightly uneven texture. The ink is heavy and dark, pressed deep into the fibres by the sheer force of the wooden press. Holding such a book is like holding a piece of the Big Bang of human knowledge. It is a physical relic of the moment when information stopped being a secret held by the few and began its long, unstoppable journey toward the many. The weight of an incunabulum in your hands is the weight of 5 centuries of survival, a testament to the durability of the codex form and the human desire to be remembered. And as you think of being remembered, you can let go of the need to remember anything else. Your mind is like that ancient parchment, strong, receptive, and calm. You are holding nothing now. The weight of the day has lifted, leaving you light, floating in the swaddling clothes of a deep and peaceful rest. While the incunabula represent the dawn of the press, there is a different kind of dawn found in the hortus siccus, or the dry garden. These are books that contain no ink at all, but rather the pressed bodies of plants. In the 17th and 18th centuries, botanists would create these herbaria by placing fresh flowers and leaves between the pages of heavy books, often weighted down with stones. Over weeks, the moisture would be absorbed by the paper, leaving behind a fragile, paper-thin ghost of the original plant. Visualize opening such a book. You turn a page to find a wild rose from the year 1742. Its petals have faded to a delicate, dusty mauve, and its leaves are the colour of old tea. It is a book of time travel. The paper has preserved not just the shape of the plant, but its very DNA. There is a profound silence to a hortus siccus. It is a library of the earth, where every page is a silent witness to a summer that ended 300 years ago. The scent is faint, a mix of dried grass and old cellar, and it reminds us that books are the ultimate vessels of preservation, capable of holding the fragile beauty of a single flower just as easily as the complex thoughts of a philosopher. The preservation of beauty often involves the art of tooling. If you look at the spine or the cover of a high-quality leather book, you will see patterns pressed into the surface, lines, circles, or intricate floral designs. This is done with hand tools made of brass, fitted with wooden handles. The bookbinder heats the brass tool over a small flame until it is exactly the right temperature. If it is too cold, it will not leave a mark. If it is too hot, it will burn the leather. Imagine the sound of the tool pressing into the dampened leather, a soft hissing shh, like a secret being whispered. This is called blind tooling, when no gold is used, creating a subtle, dark indentation that relies on shadow for its effect. But when gold leaf is laid over the leather first, the heat of the tool bonds the gold into the impression, creating gold tooling. The result is a shimmering, three-dimensional texture that catches the light as you move the book. It is a tactile map for the fingers, a topography of craftsmanship that turns a simple cover into a landscape of light and shadow, inviting you to run your hand over it and feel the rhythm of the artist's work. This rhythm leads us finally to the very backbone of the book, the raised bands. On the spine of many old books you will see horizontal ridges or bumps. These are not merely decorative, they are the physical evidence of the book's skeleton. In traditional binding, the pages are sewn together onto thick cords of hemp or linen. These cords are then laced into the covers. When the leather is stretched over the spine, it conforms to the shape of these cords, creating the raised bands. Think of them as the vertebrae of the book. They allow the spine to be both strong and flexible. When you open a book with raised bands, you can feel the structural integrity of the object. It is built to be used, built to be opened thousands of times without falling apart. These ridges are a reminder that a book is an engineered object, a masterpiece of tension and compression. They are the physical manifestation of the connection between all the disparate pages, holding them together in a single unified body. Just as your own spine supports you, allowing you to breathe and move and rest, the raised bands support the life of the book, ensuring that the story remains whole year after year, century after century. And as you feel the support of the surface beneath you, as steady and reliable as the spine of a great book, you can finally surrender to the gravity of sleep. The bands are strong, the binding is secure, you are whole, you are safe, and you are drifting now into the silent golden library of your dreams. From the structural strength of the spine, we drift toward the ethereal, where the book begins to lose its physical form and become something closer to light. This movement toward the ethereal, where the solid weight of the book begins to soften into the light of the mind, reveals a secret conversation that has been happening for centuries in the quiet white spaces of the page. If you look closely at the edges of an ancient manuscript beyond the formal columns of the text, you will find the marginalia. These are the handwritten notes, the sighs, and the sudden thoughts of readers and scribes long since gone. Visualize a monk in a cold stone cell, his fingers cramped from hours of copying Latin. In the margin, he has doodled a small whimsical cat, or perhaps he has written a tiny frustrated sentence. It is very cold, or the parchment is hairy. These marks are the fingerprints of the soul. They transform a static object into a living dialogue. To read marginalia is to realise that you are never truly alone with a book. You are part of a long, unbroken chain of thinkers who have sat in this same stillness, held this same weight, and felt their own hearts beat against the rhythm of these same words. These notes are the soft echoes of humanity, whispers across time that remind us that every story is a shared journey, a bridge built between one mind and another. While these marginal notes add layers of human thought, there is a deeper, more ghostly layer hidden beneath the very surface of some ancient pages. This is the phenomenon of the palimpsest. In times when parchment was scarce and incredibly expensive, a scribe would sometimes take an old book, one whose contents were deemed less important, and literally scrape away the ink with a pumice stone. Imagine the surface of the vellum being sanded down, the old words fading into a pale, indistinct haze. Then the scribe would write a new text over the top, but the old words never truly vanished. Like a half-remembered dream, the ghost of the original text remains embedded in the fibres of the skin. Today, using ultraviolet light, scholars can peer beneath the surface and read the shadow text that was erased 1,000 years ago. It is as if the book has a subconscious, a hidden memory of its former self. As you rest, you might feel a similar softening of your own layers, the stories of your day fading back to reveal a deeper, more ancient stillness that resides within you, a silent ground where all memories are kept safe. And as those layers of memory settle, you may notice the gentle rhythm of your heart, a steady pulse that mirrors the slow turning of the tides. Your breathing is becoming effortless, a natural flowing river that carries you further away from the shore of the waking world. You're safe, you're held, everything is exactly as it should be. This sense of belonging to a book, and a book belonging to a person, is often marked by a small, exquisite work of art tucked just inside the cover, the ex libris, or book plate. These are small, printed labels that serve as a declaration of ownership, but they are far more than mere name tags. Visualize a miniature engraving, perhaps the size of a playing card. It might depict a personal coat of arms, a serene library scene, a symbolic animal, or a motto etched in elegant script. These plates were often created by master artists and engravers, meant to be a permanent seal of the relationship between the book and its keeper. The phrase ex libris literally means from the books of. It suggests that the book is a traveller, temporarily resting in the home of its owner, a part of a larger curated world. When you see a vintage book plate, you are seeing a tiny monument to a life spent in the company of stories. It is a sign of respect, a way of saying that this particular volume was loved, protected, and cherished. It is the visual equivalent of a warm embrace, a promise of shelter for the wisdom contained within. The desire to carry that wisdom wherever we go has led to the creation of objects that defy the limits of human sight, the miniature book. While we have spoken of the massive elephant folio, there exists an entire universe at the opposite end of the scale. Picture a book so small it can fit inside the shell of a walnut, or rest on the tip of your little finger. These are not toys, but masterpieces of precision. Every element is miniaturized. The leather binding is as thin as a butterfly's wing. The type is so small it requires a magnifying glass to read. The sewing of the spine is done with threads as fine as spider silk. In the 19th century, thumb Bibles and tiny volumes of poetry were popular as portable charms. There is something hypnotic about a miniature book. It demands a different kind of attention, a squinting, focused, almost meditative gaze. It reminds us that the power of a book does not lie in its size, but in the vastness of the worlds it can contain. Even a tiny, microscopic dot of ink can hold the weight of a universe, just as a single, quiet thought can fill the entire space of your mind as you drift towards sleep. Echoing this focus on the tiny and the precious is the history of the grimoire, the book as a vessel for the arcane. Unlike a common book of stories, a grimoire was often treated as a living entity, a sacred object of power. Visualize a heavy volume bound in dark, weathered hide, perhaps held shut by a silver lock. The pages inside are filled with strange symbols, celestial maps, and secret alphabets. In the medieval imagination, the grimoire was not just a collection of instructions, it was a physical anchor for the spirit world. The ink used might be infused with rare minerals or aromatic resins like frankincense and myrrh. To own such a book was to hold a key to the hidden patterns of the universe. There is a weight to the idea of a grimoire, a feeling of ancient, heavy mystery. It speaks to our deep, subconscious belief that words have the power to change reality, to protect us, and to light the way through the dark. As you lie here, let the idea of these books of shadows remind you that the dark is not a place of fear, but a place of profound potential, a fertile ground where the seeds of your dreams are being planted. As you contemplate those hidden seeds, you might feel a warmth spreading through your limbs, a heavy, comfortable glow that signals your body's transition into deep restoration. Yes. Your mind is open and receptive, like the smooth white page of a book waiting for the first stroke of a gentle pen. This atmosphere of sacred focus leads us back to the place where so many books were born, the scriptorium. This was the writing room of the monastery, a place of absolute dedicated silence. Imagine a long, high-ceilinged room in the dead of winter. There is no fire, for the risk of smoke and spark to the precious parchment is too great. The monks sit at slanted wooden desks, their breath visible in the chilly air. They work only by the natural light of the windows, for candles are a danger to the library. The only sound is the rhythmic, scratching hiss of goosequill pens moving across vellum, a sound like dry leaves skittering across stone. This was the labour of the hands. For the scribe, the act of writing was a form of prayer, a physical discipline that required every ounce of concentration. The scriptorium was a factory of patience. A single book could take a year or more to complete. This slow, deliberate pace is the very essence of the book's soul. It is a refusal to be rushed. It is an invitation to inhabit the present moment, one stroke, one letter, one breath at a time. While the scriptorium was a place of creation, the Library of Alexandria stands in our collective memory as the ultimate symbol of the archive, the great gathering of all human thought. Visualize a city of white marble on the edge of the turquoise Mediterranean. At its heart sits the library, not just a room of shelves, but a vast complex of gardens, lecture halls and walkways. Here, for centuries, every ship that entered the harbour was searched, not for gold, but for scrolls. Any book found was taken to the library, copied, and the copy given back to the owner while the original was kept. It was a dream of total knowledge, a place where the wisdom of Greece, Egypt, Persia, and India flowed together like the waters of the Nile. Though the physical library was lost to the tides of history, its spirit survives every time we open a book. It is the archetypal sanctuary of the mind, a place where time is suspended and the voices of the past are kept alive. The lost library is not truly gone. It has simply moved inward, becoming the vast, infinite landscape of your own imagination, where all the stories you have ever heard are still resting, waiting for you to visit them in your dreams. In this inward landscape, books sometimes take on a physical life of their own through the art of paper engineering. We often think of books as flat, but the volvelle, one of the earliest forms of pop-up mechanism, turned the page into a scientific instrument. Picture a 16th century book of astronomy. On the page is a series of overlapping paper discs of different sizes, all held together by a single thread in the centre. The reader can rotate these discs independently to calculate the phases of the moon, the positions of the stars, or the rising of the sun. It is a paper computer, a tactile way of interacting with the heavens. The sound of the paper discs sliding against each other is a soft, dry whisper, a mechanical rustle that connects the hands of the reader to the movements of the cosmos. These movable parts remind us that a book is not just a container for information, but an interactive space, a world that responds to our touch, inviting us to play, to explore, and to see the universe from a different perspective. This deep fascination with the book as an object of power and beauty sometimes crosses the line into a mysterious and quiet obsession known as bibliokleptomania. This is not the common theft of a criminal, but a compulsive, overwhelming love for books that drives a person to possess them at any cost. Imagine a collector whose home is a labyrinth of paper, where the walls are made of spines and the air is thick with the scent of old leather. For the bibliokleptomaniac, the book is a talisman. To be near it, to touch it, to own it, is to absorb its power. There are stories of gentle scholars who, driven by this strange fever, would hide rare volumes under their cloaks, unable to bear the thought of the book remaining on a public shelf. While we do not condone the act, we can understand the feeling, that deep magnetic pull of a story that seems to call out to your very soul. It is a reminder of how deeply we can love these objects made of paper and ink, how they can become part of our identity, our shelter, and our most intimate companions. And as you feel that magnetic pull toward the quiet centre of your own being, you can let go of the need to possess anything at all. You're drifting into a place where all stories are free, where knowledge is not something to be guarded but something to be breathed. Your body is light, your mind is clear, and the world is fading into a soft golden blur. The ultimate testament to this endurance of the story is found in the longest novel ever written, Marcel Proust's In Search of Lost Time. It consists of over 1 million words, spanning 7 volumes of profound rhythmic prose. Visualize the famous scene of the Madeleine, a small shell-shaped cake dipped in tea. As the narrator tastes it, the scent and flavour unlock a flood of memories from his childhood, memories he thought were lost forever. This is the magic of the book. It is a time machine. Proust's novel is like a great slow-moving river. It does not hurry to a conclusion. It lingers in the sensory details of a garden at sunset, the texture of a velvet gown, the quality of a particular light in a room. To read it is to enter a different state of time, a slow time, where every moment is expanded and savoured. It is the perfect companion for this journey towards sleep. Like the novel itself, your rest is not a destination to be reached, but a vast, beautiful landscape to be explored, a search for that lost time where you're free from the clock, free from the day, and completely at peace in the endless unfolding story of your own rest. As the million words of the great novel begin to dissolve into the silence of the night, we turn our attention toward the physical elements that protect the story through the ages, the armour of the book. The protective armour of the book often takes on a softness that surprises the senses, a gentle layering known as the chemise binding. Visualise a book from the late 14th century, but instead of a rigid naked cover, it wears a loose overcoat of heavy midnight blue velvet. This fabric extends far beyond the edges of the boards, draping down like the hem of a royal robe. When you hold such a book, your hands do not touch cold leather or hard wood, but the deep plush pile of silk velvet. This chemise or shirt was designed to protect the precious gold and jewels that might be encrusted on the inner binding, but it served a more intimate purpose as well. As you sat in a draughty stone chamber, the long fabric would drape over your knees, a warm weight that connected the story directly to your body. The edges of the velvet are often frayed just slightly, a soft fringe that catches the low light of a flickering fire. This is the book as a garment, a tactile sanctuary that wraps around the words like a heavy blanket, inviting you to nestle into the narrative and let the outside world simply fall away into the shadows. This fluid connection between the book and the body is further refined in the structure of limp vellum bindings. Imagine a book that has no heavy wooden boards or stiff cardboard inside its covers. Instead, the outer casing is a single sturdy sheet of creamy calfskin vellum, folded over the pages and secured with simple leather ties. Because there is no rigid core, the book is alive in your hands. It is flexible, bending and yielding as you turn the pages. It feels warm, organic, almost like skin touching skin. When the book is closed and the leather ties are knotted, it takes on a soft, rounded shape, resembling a pillow or a smooth stone gathered from a riverbed. These bindings were the choice of travellers and scholars who lived life on the move. A limp vellum book does not fight against you. It moves with the rhythm of your breathing, a supple companion that understands the grace of flexibility. It reminds us that strength does not always come from hardness, but from the ability to bend without breaking, to remain soft while holding the most profound truths securely within. And as you reflect on that gentle strength, you might feel your own muscles mimicking the flexibility of that vellum. Your shoulders drop an inch further away from your ears. Your jaw uncurls. You're becoming as supple and relaxed as a book that has been read for 100 years, perfectly shaped to the contours of rest. Yes, you are sinking deeper now. The softness of the vellum eventually gives way to a much older, much deeper memory held within the earth itself, the memory of the library of Ashurbanipal. Thousands of years before paper existed, knowledge was not written on skin, but carved into the very bones of the world. Clay. Visualize a great hall in ancient Nineveh, where the shelves are not filled with paper, but with thousands of rectangular tablets of fine grey clay. These were not dried in the sun, but fired in a kiln, turning them into stone. There is a profound permanence to this library. While paper burns and leather rots, these clay tablets survived a great fire that destroyed the palace. The heat of the conflagration only served to bake the clay harder, vitrifying the words and preserving them for eternity. To touch such a tablet is to feel the cool, heavy grain of the earth. It is a library that smells of rain on dry soil, a mineral scent that anchors the mind to the deep time of the planet. These tablets are the silent survivors of the fire, reminding us that even the most destructive forces can sometimes serve to make our stories indestructible. The marks upon these tablets carry a rhythm of their own, a geometric dance known as cuneiform. Imagine a scribe sitting by the banks of the Tigris, holding a fresh, damp slab of clay that feels like heavy silk. In his other hand, he holds a simple reed stylus cut to a triangular point. With a series of rhythmic, pressing motions, he indents the clay. There are no curves here, only wedges and lines, short, sharp, and precise. The stylus goes in, and it pulls away with a tiny, wet click. The result is a texture that is incredibly tactile, a series of shadows and highlights that change as the light moves across the tablet. It is a language of depth. You do not just see cuneiform, you could read it with your fingertips in total darkness. It is a script of the earth, a series of mountain peaks and valleys carved into the mud. The repetition of the wedge shapes creates a visual hum, a steady, vibrating pattern that settles the eyes and speaks of a time when writing was a physical negotiation with the elements of the world. This ancient, earthy texture eventually transitioned into a realm of pure, blinding clarity with the creation of the Codex Sinaiticus. Written in the middle of the 4th century, it is one of the oldest and most important books in existence, and its visual presence is one of ethereal light. Visualize pages of the finest parchment, so thin and white they seem to glow from within. The text is arranged in 4 narrow columns per page, creating a rhythmic verticality that looks like the columns of a marble temple. The ink is a faded brown, but the Greek characters are so clear, so perfectly formed, they seem to float on the surface of the page. There is a breathtaking sense of space in this book. The margins are wide and silent, providing a buffer of white light around the sacred text. To turn these pages, even in the imagination, is to experience a sense of profound cleanliness and order. It is a book of the high desert, of the clear, thin air of Mount Sinai, where the distractions of the world are stripped away, leaving only the essential luminous truth of the Word. As that white light fills your mind's eye, you may find that your thoughts are becoming equally clear and spacious. The clutter of the day is being pushed to the wide, silent margins of your consciousness. You are the white page, you are the stillness, and in this space your breathing is a slow, luminous tide, rising and falling with effortless grace. Hidden within that spaciousness is a secret grid, a series of tiny invisible landmarks known as parchment pricking. Before a scribe could begin the long labour of writing, he had to ensure his lines were perfectly straight, and for this he used a tool of exquisite precision, the compass, or the awl. Imagine the scribe taking a stack of parchment sheets and using a ruler, poking tiny microscopic holes along the outer edges of the page. If you hold an ancient manuscript up to the light, you can still see these pinpricks, like a tiny constellation of stars running down the margin. These holes served as the anchors for the lead point, or the blind rule, faint lines drawn across the page to guide the pen. These marks are the evidence of the hidden scaffolding that supports all great beauty. They remind us that even the most flowing poetic prose is built upon a foundation of quiet discipline and careful measurement. The pricking of the parchment is the heartbeat of the book's construction, a steady rhythmic pulse that ensures that even in the midst of a grand story, there is an underlying order, a safety in the structure that allows the mind to truly let go. This sense of order extends to how books have occupied our physical space over the centuries, often in ways that seem reversed to our modern eyes. In the great libraries of the Renaissance, you would not see the spines of books facing out. Instead, you would be met with the fore-edge title. Visualize a shelf of massive leather-bound volumes, but instead of seeing the titles on the backs, you're looking at the closed edges of the paper. On these edges, written in bold, dark ink, are the names of the authors: Plato, Aristotle, Augustine. Because books were often shelved flat or with their spines inward to protect the delicate hinges of the binding, the fore-edge became the face of the book. There is something mysterious about this perspective. The book is turned away from you, showing you its heart, its pages, rather than its back. It requires you to look at the substance of the object first. The sight of 100 fore-edge titles is a sight of raw potential, a wall of compressed leaves that holds the wisdom of the ages. It changes the way you move through a room. You're not looking at a gallery of labels, but a library of silent, waiting paper, a forest of edges that whispers its secrets only when you reach out and turn the volume around. Entering such a space often requires a transition of the spirit, a commitment to the sanctity of the archive that is perfectly captured in the Bodleian Library Oath. For centuries, every scholar wishing to use the ancient library at Oxford has had to recite a formal vow in their own language. I hereby undertake not to remove from the library, nor to mark, deface or injure in any way any volume, document or other object belonging to it, not to bring into the library or kindle therein any fire or flame. Imagine the weight of those words as they are spoken in the hush of a room that has seen 500 years of thought. Not to kindle any fire. In the old world, the library was a place of shadows and cold, for the smallest spark could erase a millennium of history. This oath is a promise to protect the light of the mind by living in the physical dimness. It creates a contract of silence and safety. When you hear the words of the oath, it acts as a mental key, locking the door on the chaos of the world and opening the door to the sanctuary. It is a verbal boundary, a deep breath of intention that signals to the brain that we're entering a space where the only thing permitted to burn is the quiet flame of curiosity. Within that protected silence, the senses become heightened, and we encounter the deep, intoxicating scent of ink. This is not the floral perfume of aging paper, but a sharper, more industrial aroma that speaks of the press. Classical printing ink was a thick, pungent paste made of boiled linseed oil and carbon black, often derived from the soot of lamps. To this, printers would add dryers, often minerals like copperas or litharge. Imagine the smell of a print shop in the morning. It is a mix of toasted bread, heavy oil, and a metallic, earthy tang. It is the scent of the transition from thought to physical reality. Linseed oil has a warm, nutty depth that lingers in the fibres of the paper for decades. When you open a well-preserved book from the 18th century, you are breathing in the fossilised air of the workshop. It is a grounding scent, a smell of heavy machinery and artisanal craft that balances the ethereal nature of the stories. It is a scent that says, "This is real, this is solid, this is here to stay." And as that solid, grounding scent fills your imagination, you feel the weight of your own body pressing into the mattress. You are real. You are solid. You are here, and you are staying in this perfect protected moment. The ink of your day has dried. The press has stopped. There is only the lingering warm aroma of a story well told. This reverence for the physical craft of the book reached its zenith in the work of William Morris and the Kelmscott Press. At the end of the 19th century, as the world became increasingly industrial and fast-paced, Morris staged a beautiful rebellion. He wanted to return to the ideal book, visualise a page from the Kelmscott Chaucer. It does not look like a modern book, it looks like a garden. The margins are filled with dense intertwining vines of ivy and grape leaves, carved into wood blocks with obsessive detail. The type is a heavy, rugged black letter that Morris designed himself, inspired by the earliest printers. The paper is handmade from linen rags, tough and textured. Morris believed that a book should be a work of art in every dimension: its weight, its scent, its feel, and its sight. Looking at a Kelmscott page is a hypnotic experience. Your eye gets lost in the thickets of the borders, tracing the curve of a leaf until it merges with the tail of a letter. It is a visual manifestation of nature reclaiming the word. It is a book that breathes with the forest. It reminds us that the ultimate goal of reading is to return to a state of wonder, to see the world not as a series of facts to be processed, but as a beautiful, intricate tapestry to be inhabited. And as you trace those silver vines in your mind, they begin to wrap gently around your thoughts, lulling them into a state of green and quiet growth, pulling you down into the fertile soil of a deep, natural sleep. From the lush, intricate gardens of the Kelmscott Press, we drift away from the printed page and toward the silent, unwritten spaces where the book begins to disappear. The lush, intricate gardens of the Kelmscott Press, with their silver vines and dark, heavy type, eventually lead us back to the very foundation of the book's weight, to a time when the armour of a story was literally carved from the forest. Long before the invention of cardboard or pasteboard, the covers of books were made of solid wood. Visualise a massive medieval volume resting on a stone plinth. The covers are thick slabs of oak or beech, smoothed by hand and polished with beeswax until they glow with a deep honey-coloured light. In fact, the English word book itself traces its roots to the Old English bock, which means beech tree, while the Latin word liber, meaning book, originally referred to the inner bark of trees. When you touch the cover of such a book, you're touching the literal body of the forest. The wood is heavy, cool, and incredibly stable. Over centuries, these boards might warp ever so slightly, creating a gentle curve that fits the palm of your hand as if the tree itself were reaching out to hold the knowledge within. The grain of the wood, those slow, concentric circles of time, runs beneath the leather like a hidden map of the seasons, a reminder that every story is a slow growth, a steady accumulation of layers rooted deep in the dark earth and reaching upward toward the light. While these heavy wooden boards protected the wisdom of scholars, a much smaller, lighter form of wooden protection was created for the very youngest hands. This was the horn book. Imagine a small wooden paddle, shaped like a handheld mirror, carved from a single piece of oak or holly. It was not a book of many pages, but a single sheet of paper containing the alphabet, the Lord's Prayer, or simple phonics. To protect this precious paper from the sticky fingers and rough play of children, it was covered with a thin, translucent slice of an ox's horn. The horn was soaked and peeled into a sheet so thin you could see through it, then tacked to the wood with small brass nails. Visualize the texture of the horn. It is not perfectly clear like glass, but has a milky, opalescent quality, with tiny, hair-like streaks of amber and cream. It is warm to the touch and slightly flexible. In the dim light of a 17th century schoolroom, the horn book would catch the glow of the hearth, the alphabet shimmering beneath its protective shield. It was the child's first screen, a durable, tactile gateway to the world of literacy. To hold a horn book is to feel the weight of a beginning, the very first step on a journey that leads through thousands of pages and millions of words, all protected by the humble, organic armour of the animal kingdom. And as you visualise that small protective shield, you might feel a similar sense of protection wrapping around you. Your covers are soft, your environment is safe, and the alphabet of your day is beginning to blur into a single peaceful hum. Yes, your mind is settling into a quiet rhythm, a slow, steady pulse that knows exactly how to find the path to deep sleep. From the humble child's paddle, our journey takes a sudden, breathtaking turn toward the divine, toward a book that is often called the Work of Angels. This is the Book of Kells. Created on the remote island of Iona over 1200 years ago, this manuscript is a testament to the absolute limits of human patience and vision. Imagine a single page, the famous Chiro page. It is so densely packed with detail that in 1 square inch there are over 100 intricate interlocking knots and swirls. Scholars have used microscopes to find details that the human eye can barely see. The ink was made from the most precious substances of the ancient world: crushed kermes insects for red, copper for green, and the rare lapis lazuli for blue. It is said that 185 calves were sacrificed to provide the vellum for this single book. To look at a page of the Book of Kells is to lose oneself in a labyrinth of colour and form. The lines do not just sit on the page, they dance, they weave, they dive under and over one another in a hypnotic, endless flow. It is a visual prayer, a symphony of geometry that asks the eye to slow down, to linger, and eventually to surrender to the mystery of the pattern. The more you look, the more the page seems to breathe, the tiny spirals turning like slow galaxies in a sea of cream-coloured skin. This hypnotic depth of the page is often mirrored on the very edges of the book block through a technique known as gophering. If you were to close a gilded book from the 16th century and look at the gold edges, you might expect a flat, mirror-like surface. But in a goffered book, the gold is textured. Imagine the bookbinder taking small, heated metal stamps, circles, stars, or tiny fleurs-de-lis, and pressing them firmly into the gold leaf after it has been polished. The heat and pressure indent the paper edges, creating a pattern that looks like lace or embossed metal. When the light hits these edges, it doesn't just reflect, it scatters. It creates a shimmering, three-dimensional effect that changes as you move the book. It is a secret texture, a hidden landscape that exists only when the book is silent and closed. Gophering is the art of the in-between, a decorative touch that honours the book even when it is at rest. It is like the embroidery on the underside of a hem, a private beauty that only the owner truly knows. To run your thumb over a goffered edge is to feel a rhythmic metallic ripple, a gentle vibration that tells the story of the binder's meticulous hand, working in the quiet hours to turn a functional object into a treasure. The tactile vibration of the gold leads our senses away from the eye and toward the nose, toward the deep, resinous scent of cedarwood that often haunts the world's oldest libraries. In many ancient archives, the shelves themselves were not made of oak or beech, but of cedar. This was a deliberate choice for preservation. Cedarwood contains natural oils, cedrol and cedrin, that act as a powerful deterrent to the insects that would otherwise feast on the glue and paper of the books. Visualize a high-domed library in the heat of a summer afternoon. As the sun warms the wood of the shelves, the scent of cedar begins to rise, filling the air with a dry, peppery and slightly sweet aroma. It is the scent of a mountain forest, an ancient perfume that creates a barrier of protection around the books. This fragrance is so persistent that it can linger in the fibres of a book's binding for centuries. To open a book that has lived on a cedar shelf is to release a ghost of the wood, a breath of the forest that calms the nerves and clears the mind. It is a medicinal scent, a natural antiseptic that turns the library into a sanatorium for the soul, a place where the air itself is designed to keep decay at bay and to bring the reader into a state of quiet, focused presence. And as that scent of cedar drifts through the halls of your imagination, you may notice that your own breathing is becoming deeper and more resonant. The air is cool, the space is vast, and the protection is absolute. You're being breathed by the room, a slow and effortless exchange that carries you further and further into the quiet archive of the night. This medicinal quality of the library environment is not just a poetic metaphor. It is the foundation of a practice known as bibliotherapy. The idea that books can heal the mind is an ancient one. Over the door of the library at ancient Thebes there was an inscription that read, "The healing place of the soul." During World War I, librarians were sent to military hospitals, not just to provide entertainment, but to provide a specific kind of prescription for soldiers suffering from what we now call shell shock. They found that certain rhythms of prose, certain descriptions of nature, and the steady, predictable structure of a story could actually regulate the heart rate and lower the levels of stress in the body. Imagine a book as a physical dose of peace. The act of holding the weight of the book, the tactile sensation of the paper, and the immersion in a world governed by the rules of language creates a safe container for the mind. Bibliotherapy reminds us that stories are not just things we read, they're environments we inhabit. When the world outside becomes too loud or too chaotic, the book offers a controlled, quiet reality where we can rest, repair, and recover. It is the medicine of the word, a slow-acting balm that works its way into the deepest layers of our consciousness, soothing the jagged edges of the day and preparing the spirit for the ultimate healing of sleep. To protect this medicine, we often place it within a home of its own, a structure known as a Solander box. Named after Daniel Solander, a botanist who travelled with Captain Cook, these boxes are designed to look exactly like a large, thick book, but they are actually protective cases. Imagine a box bound in heavy buckram or fine leather, with a spine that features raised bands and gold tooling. But when you pull it from the shelf, it doesn't open with pages. It hinges open like a clamshell to reveal a hollow interior lined with acid-free paper or soft velvet. Inside the Solander box, the most fragile manuscripts, the rarest prints, or the most delicate botanical specimens are kept in a state of perpetual twilight. They are shielded from light, from dust, and from the fluctuations of the air. There is something deeply comforting about the concept of the Solander box, a book that contains a secret, a shell that protects a treasure. It is a home within a home, a sanctuary of absolute stability. As you settle into your bed, you might think of your room as your own Solander box, a perfectly climate-controlled, velvet-lined space where you are the precious treasure, kept safe from the world, held in a state of quiet, protected rest until the morning light. The silence of the Solander box is magnified 1,000 times in the architecture of the world's great circular libraries, where the very shape of the room creates a whispering gallery of thought. Visualize the reading room of the British Museum or the Library of Congress. These are vast, domed spaces, where the walls are entirely lined with books, rising tier after tier toward the light of a central skylight. In a circular room, acoustics behave in strange and beautiful ways. A whisper made against one wall can travel along the curve of the dome and be heard perfectly by someone standing on the exact opposite side, hundreds of feet away. In such a library, the silence is alive. It is a focused, architectural hush. The dome acts as a giant ear, catching the rustle of a page or the scratch of a pen and folding it into a single, unified atmosphere of study. The circularity of the space suggests that knowledge is not a straight line, but a cycle, a continuous returning flow. To sit in the centre of such a room is to feel the weight of all those millions of books pressing inward, focusing their collective energy on the silent reader at the heart of the circle. It is the shape of a dream, a perfect horizon of paper that surrounds you completely, ensuring that no matter which way you turn, you are met with the comforting presence of the story. And as you sit at the centre of that circular library in your mind, you feel the boundaries of your awareness expanding to meet the walls. The whisper of the books is a soft white noise, a gentle static that lulls the analytical mind into silence. You are the centre of the circle, you are the heart of the hush, and you are ready to let the circle close. The structural integrity of this circular world is held together by the very bones of the book, a technique of ancient origins known as Coptic binding. Unlike modern books where the spine is hidden under a layer of glue and paper, a Coptic-bound book leaves its skeleton exposed. Imagine looking at the spine of a book and seeing the intricate chain-link stitching of the thread as it weaves through the various sections of paper. This method was developed by the Coptic Christians in Egypt as early as the 4th century. Because it uses no glue, a Coptic-bound book has a unique and beautiful property. It can open a full 360 degrees without the spine cracking or the pages pulling. It is the most flexible of all bindings. Visualize the thread, usually a heavy waxed linen, forming a series of braids along the spine that look like a miniature rope ladder. There is a raw, honest beauty to Coptic binding. It shows you exactly how it is made. It celebrates the tension and the connection that keeps the pages together. It is a binding that breathes, a structural dance that has remained unchanged for nearly 2,000 years, proving that the simplest connections are often the strongest and most enduring. All of these connections, the wood, the horn, the gold, the thread, lead us finally to the heart of the matter, the concept of the noyau, or the kernel of the book. In French, noyau refers to the stone of a fruit, the hard, essential core that contains the seed of the future. In the world of the book, the noyau is that central, indestructible idea or emotion that the story is built around. Imagine the book as an onion, with layers of binding, end papers, margins, and text. But at the very centre, there is a point of absolute density, a single truth that gives the entire object its reason for being. This is the part of the book that stays with you long after the physical object is closed and the details of the plot have faded. It is the afterglow of the reading experience. As you prepare to drift into the final layers of sleep, you might find your own noyau, the essential, quiet core of your being that remains untouched by the noise of the day. It is a hard, bright seed of peace, nestled deep within the layers of your consciousness. The books have done their work. They have brought you to the threshold. Now you can let the layers fall away, one by one, until only the kernel remains, resting in the dark, fertile soil of the dream world, ready to bloom into the morning. The physical armour of the book has brought us safely to the edge of the unwritten, where the heavy wooden boards and the iron chains dissolve into the lightness of the sleeping mind. This lightness of the sleeping mind, where thoughts drift like unmoored boats on a dark lake, brings us back to the silent, invisible logic that keeps the pages of the world in their proper order. Even when the mind is at rest, there is a secret word waiting at the bottom of the page, a quiet handoff known as the catchword. Visualize a page from a book printed in the 16th century. At the very bottom right, tucked away in the white margin like a shy guest, there is a single word sitting all by itself. This word is not part of the sentence above it. Instead, it is the first word of the following page. It was placed there by the printer to ensure that the bookbinder, working in a dim workshop filled with the scent of glue and leather, would never lose his place. It is a bridge made of ink. It is a whisper from the future of the story, a promise that the narrative will continue seamlessly when the page is turned. As you lie here, your own mind is full of these catchwords, soft, half-formed thoughts that prepare the way for the dreams of the next hour. There is no jagged break, no sudden jump, just a smooth, rhythmic transition, a word at the bottom of the day that leads you effortlessly into the first chapter of the night. The eye drifts from this small, solitary word at the bottom toward the deep, shadowed valley at the centre of the book, a place of mystery known as the gutter. This is the space between the two pages of an open book, the dark line where the paper curves down into the binding. In the dim light of your imagination, the gutter is a place of absolute security. It is the core of the book's strength, the place where the thread is deepest and the glue is strongest. When the book is open, the gutter catches the shadows, creating a soft velvet line that defines the two halves of the story. It is a reminder that even in the middle of a grand narrative, there is a centre, a point of stillness where everything is held together. If you look closely into the gutter of a very old book, you can see the tiny white loops of the sewing thread, like the rib cage of a small creature. It is a hidden architecture, a secret spine that remains invisible most of the time, yet it is what allows the pages to spread their wings and fly. You can feel that same sense of a central axis in your own body now, a steady, quiet core of peace that allows your limbs to spread out and relax, knowing that you are held together by a strength that requires no effort at all. And as you settle into that central strength, you may notice that the rhythm of your heart is like the rhythmic turning of the pages, slow, steady, inevitable. Each beat is a validation of your rest. Each breath is a soft yes to the silence. Yes, you're sinking deeper into the soft shadow of the gutter, where the day is forgotten and only the stillness remains. This structural integrity, this hidden ribcage of the book, is crowned at either end by a touch of decorative grace. The headbands and tailbands. If you look at the top or the bottom of the spine of a finely bound book, you will see a tiny embroidered ridge of colourful silk. Visualize a master binder's hands, working with a needle as fine as a whisker. He weaves together strands of silk, perhaps a deep crimson and a shimmering gold, over a small core of leather or cord. Originally, these bands were functional, added to strengthen the point where the reader's finger would pull the book from the shelf, but over time they became the jewels of the binding. They look like a tiny braided crown at the head of the book and a matching set of feet at the tail. They provide a final, elegant finish, a splash of colour that only reveals itself when you look at the book from above or below. They are the small, unnecessary beauties that make the world feel cared for. As you rest, imagine these silk threads weaving through your thoughts, binding them together with a soft, colourful strength, capping the day with a crown of gold, and resting your feet on a tailband of velvet crimson. The vivid colour of the silk reminds us of a time when the page itself was a landscape of contrast, a tradition known as rubrication. In the early days of manuscripts, and even in the first printed books, the most important words were not black but a bright, startling red. The word rubric comes from the Latin rubrica, meaning red ochre. Scribes would use ink made from cinnabar or lead to highlight the start of a chapter, the name of a saint, or a particularly important instruction. Imagine a page of dense, dark black letter type, and then, suddenly, a word that glows like a coal in a fireplace. It is a visual shout, a way of guiding the soul through the text with the light of fire. These red words were the rubrics of the page, the rules of the road for the reader. There is something deeply comforting about this clarity. the way the red stands out against the cream of the paper and the black of the ink. It is a map of emphasis. In the quiet theatre of your mind, the red ink of the day's worries is fading now, turning into a soft pale pink, and then disappearing altogether into the cool dark ink of the night, leaving behind only the calm black and white simplicity of deep rest. And as the colours fade, you feel the weight of your eyelids becoming heavier, as if they were made of the finest, most expensive vellum. Your breathing is a slow, rhythmic brushstroke, painting the silence with the colour of peace. Yes, you're drifting now, moving further away from the bright rubrics of the waking world. While the rubrics provided a map for the eyes, the 17th century often provided a map for the entire history of a story in a single, staggering breath, the verbose title page. In those days, a book's title was not a few words, but a sprawling rhythmic paragraph that filled the entire front page. Visualize a title page that begins with a few large, bold words and then descends into a cascade of smaller and smaller text, detailing every adventure, every map, and every philosophical proof contained within the following 500 pages. To read such a title is to enter a trance of language. The words flow over you like a waterfall, a full and true account of the most remarkable and signal providences, both of judgment and mercy, which have happened in these last ages, together with many rare and curious observations on the nature of the stars and the depths of the sea. The sheer length of the title creates a sense of abundance, a feeling that you are about to enter a world that is vast and richly detailed. It is a long, slow introduction, a verbal hallway that prepares you for the mansion of the book. As you listen to the rhythmic flow of these ancient, long-winded titles, let your own internal narrative become equally long and slow and unimportant. The details of your life are becoming a long, trailing title page, a series of words that you don't need to read, a background hum that simply confirms the depth and the richness of the sleep you're about to enter. This long hallway of words leads us eventually to the very beginning of the written journey, to the banks of a river where the book was still a secret held within a reed. This is the world of the papyrus scroll. Before the page there was the roll. Visualize a plant called Cyprus papyrus growing in the shallow, sun-drenched waters of the Nile. Its stalks are triangular, reaching high toward the Egyptian sun. The ancient makers would peel the inner pith of these stalks into thin strips, lay them side by side, and then lay another layer across them at a right angle. They would beat the layers together, and the natural sap of the plant would act as a glue, creating a sheet that was remarkably strong and flexible. When these sheets were joined together, they formed a scroll that could be 20 or 30 feet long. Reading a scroll was a horizontal journey, a slow unrolling of time. You would hold the roll in your right hand and unspool it into your left, the text moving across your field of vision like a slow-moving river. There were no pages to flip, no sudden breaks, just a continuous flowing stream of thought. To read a scroll was to participate in the rhythm of the river itself. Imagine your own consciousness as a long golden scroll of papyrus, slowly unrolling in the dark. You're not jumping from thought to thought. You're simply watching the river move, the light reflecting off the water, the reeds swaying in the warm breeze as the scroll of the day reaches its peaceful, silent end. As the river of the scroll flows by, you may find that the tension in your body is dissolving into the water. Your limbs are as light and flexible as a sun-dried reed. Your mind is as smooth as the polished surface of the papyrus. Yes, you're flowing with the current now, moving toward the vast, silent ocean of deep sleep. The survival of these ancient scrolls and books was often a battle against the invisible forces of nature, leading to a strange and bitter defense, the use of wormwood and bitter glue. To protect their labor from the hunger of the bookworm, ancient binders would mix their pastes with infusions of bitter herbs. Imagine the smell of a medieval scriptorium, the sweet scent of honey and wax mixed with the sharp, medicinal tang of wormwood and colocynth. They would soak the leather and the paper in these bitter extracts, making the book literally distasteful to the creatures that would consume it. It is a profound thought that the survival of the world's greatest wisdom once depended on the bitterness of a leaf. The book became a fortress, a protected object that could sit in a damp monastery for 100 years and remain untouched. This bitterness was a shield, a silent no to the forces of decay. As you rest, you can feel a similar shield around your own peace. The noise and the worms of the day's anxieties cannot reach you here. You're protected by a layer of silence that is as effective as any ancient herb. You're a closed book, a secure archive, and the bitterness of the world has no place in the sweet, deep quiet of your rest. Within these protected fortresses of knowledge, there was a figure who acted as a merchant of dreams, a curator of the soul's journey, the bibliopole. In the ancient world of Rome and Greece, the bibliopole was more than just a bookseller. He was a publisher, a librarian, and a guide. Imagine walking into a bibliopole shop on a narrow shaded street in ancient Rome. The walls are lined with pigeonholes called nidi, or nests, each one holding a scroll with a small parchment tag hanging from the end. The air is cool and smells of old paper and the cedar oil used to preserve it. The bibliopole would know every scroll in his nests. He would guide you not to the book you wanted, but to the book you needed. He was a keeper of the keys to other worlds. There is a gentleness to the idea of the book nest, the thought that every story is a bird waiting to take flight in the mind of a reader. Your own mind is full of these nests now, but the birds are all asleep, their wings tucked in, their songs silent. The bibliopole of your subconscious has closed the shop for the night, pulled the shutters, and left you in the perfect, echoing silence of the archive, where the only thing that remains is the soft, rhythmic breathing of the books. This sense of organised silence has not always looked the same on the shelf. The very posture of the book has evolved over the centuries. Visualise a library from the Middle Ages. You would not see rows of vertical spines as you do today. Instead, the books would be lying flat, stacked like stones in a wall, or they would be standing with their fore-edges facing out, their spines hidden in the shadows. For a long time, the idea of standing a book on its end was considered a strain on its structure. A book was an object of gravity, a heavy treasure that wanted to lie down. When you see a shelf of books lying horizontally, it creates a different feeling in the room, a sense of rest, of stability, of a weight that has found its home. It is a landscape of levels rather than a forest of lines. As you lie flat in your bed, you are adopting the ancient posture of the book. You're letting gravity do the work. You're no longer standing up, bracing yourself against the world. You have turned your spine to the wall and your heart to the quiet, and you're simply resting page upon page, layer upon layer, in the horizontal peace of the night. And as you settle into that horizontal peace, you may find that the room around you is dissolving into a soft grey mist. The shelves are fading, the books are becoming shadows, and the only thing that is real is the heavy, comfortable weight of your own body. Yes. You are the final book in the stack, perfectly placed, perfectly still, perfectly at rest. All of these details, the catchwords, the gutters, the bitter glue and the ancient nests, leave behind something that transcends the physical object, the afterimage of the book. When you finish a truly great story and close the cover, there is a moment of profound transition. If you close your eyes, the world of the book does not vanish immediately. It remains as a mental afterimage, a luminous ghost of the landscape you've just left. You can still feel the cold of the mountain, see the colour of the heroine's dress, and hear the echo of the final conversation. It is a state of lingering presence, where the boundary between the fiction and your own life is blurred and beautiful. This afterimage is the ultimate gift of the book. It is a bridge between the world of activity and the world of dreams. As our journey through these facts begins to soften and slow, let the afterimage of all these beautiful things, the gold leaf, the silk headbands, the ancient scrolls, linger in your mind. They are not facts to be remembered, but colours to be felt. They are the ornaments of your sleep, the decorations of your deep subconscious library. The book is closing now, the light is being extinguished, and the after image is fading into a soft velvety dark, where the story of your rest is just beginning to be written. From the lingering after image of the finished story, we drift toward the silent, unmapped territories, where the book becomes the dream itself. This ethereal drifting through the unmapped territories of the dream brings us to a sensation of touch so delicate, it feels like a memory of a cloud. This is the realm of bibliopegy, the ancient and multifaceted art of binding the spirit of a story. While we have seen the heavy armour of oak and the resilience of leather, there exists a tradition of luxury bindings designed for the boudoir of the 18th century. Imagine a book bound not in skin, but in the finest Leon silk, or a deep midnight blue velvet that has been embroidered with silver thread and tiny microscopic pearls. To hold such a book is to feel a softness that defies the traditional weight of knowledge. The fabric is cool against the skin, yet it warms quickly to the touch of the hand. In the candlelight of a private library, the silver threads catch the flicker, creating a shimmering, moving constellation on the cover. These books were never meant for the rough travel of a saddlebag. They were meant for the quiet, still moments of a life of leisure. They represent the book as an extension of the soul's desire for beauty, a tactile poem that begins long before the first page is even turned. As you feel the weight of your own blankets, imagine they are the velvet covers of a great soft book, wrapping you in a binding of silk and peace, holding your story securely through the long, quiet hours of the night. While the silk binding offers a tactile uniqueness, there is a linguistic phenomenon that offers a singular solitary light within the text itself, the hapax legomenon. This is a word that occurs only once within an entire body of work, or even within an entire language. In the vast, swirling galaxy of a million words, the hapax legomenon is a single solitary star. Imagine a word in an ancient Greek poem or a Shakespearean play that is never repeated, never echoed, never shared. It stands alone, a unique vibration of thought that occurred in the mind of the author in one specific moment and was never summoned again. There is a profound loneliness to such a word, but also a profound majesty. It is a signature of the moment's absolute uniqueness. As you drift towards sleep, your mind often produces its own hapax legomena, unique images, strange words, or sudden flashes of colour that appear once in the theatre of your dream and then vanish forever. They are the once spoken truths of your subconscious. You don't need to decode them or remember them, you simply need to witness their passing, like a single falling star in a clear night sky, knowing that their very rarity is what makes the sky of your mind so vast and so beautiful. And as that single star fades into the deep indigo of your thoughts, you may notice the silence in your room deepening. Your breathing is a slow, rhythmic tide, washing away the echoes of the day. Yes, you're becoming as unique and as still as that solitary word. Everything else is falling away, leaving only the peaceful centre of your own being. The silence of a single word often gives way to the collective silence of a tragedy, followed by a breathtaking resurrection, as seen in the history of the Library of Congress. Visualize the year 1814. The sky over Washington, D.C. is a bruised and angry red as the British set fire to the Capitol. Inside, the fledgling library of the young nation is being consumed by the flames. Thousands of books, the early memory of a country, are turning to ash, their charred fragments blowing like black leaves in the wind. It felt like an ending, a permanent erasure. But then, from the quiet hills of Monticello came a message of hope. Thomas Jefferson, who had spent 50 years obsessively collecting books, offered his personal library, 6,487 volumes, to replace what was lost. "I cannot live without books," he famously said. Imagine the wagon train carrying these books to the Capitol, a slow, creaking procession of paper and leather. Jefferson's collection was not just larger, it was more diverse, containing books on science, philosophy, architecture, and cooking. It transformed the library from a narrow legal archive into a universal treasure house. This is the phoenix of the book world, the realization that even when the physical objects are lost to the fire, the impulse to gather and protect the word is indestructible. Your own mind is like this library. Even after the most exhausting day, even when you feel burned out, there is always a quiet wagon train of rest approaching, ready to replenish your spirit and rebuild your inner world with the gentle, cool materials of sleep. This movement from the fire to the cool replenishment of the shelf brings us to a physical state of the book that is rarely seen today, the uncut page. In the 19th century, books were often sold in signatures, large sheets of paper folded into sections, but with the top and side edges still joined together. To read the book, you had to be a participant in its birth. Visualize a reader sitting by a window, holding a slender ivory or silver paper knife. As they reached the end of a visible page, they would have to gently insert the knife into the fold and slice upward. The sound is a soft, satisfying zip, the sound of paper yielding to intent. There is a delicious tension in this act. You are the first person in history to see what is written on that hidden surface. The uncut page is a secret waiting to be told, a virgin landscape of ink. It requires patience. It forces you to slow down to earn the next chapter. Modern books are opened by machines, but an antique book with uncut pages is a time capsule of potential. As you drift closer to sleep, you're moving toward your own uncut pages. The dreams of the coming hours are folded away, tucked into the quiet layers of your mind. You don't need to force them open. The knife of sleep is gentle. It will slice through the folds of your consciousness with effortless grace, revealing the beautiful, unread stories that wait for you in the deep dark. And as you feel that gentle opening within your mind, you may notice a warmth spreading from your chest to your limbs. The tension is uncurling, like the fibers of paper yielding to a silver blade. You're open, you're receptive. Yes, the story is waiting, and you are ready to turn the page. While some pages wait for the reader's knife, others were once kept hidden behind a much darker boundary, the Index Librorum Prohibitorum. For centuries, this was the forbidden list, a catalogue of books that were deemed too dangerous, too radical, or too unsettling for the public eye. Imagine a secret section of a great cathedral library, a place known in some traditions as the Enfer, or Hell. Behind locked iron grates, the books sat in the shadows. Some were marked with a red wax seal, others had their titles scrubbed from their spines. There is a strange magnetic power to a forbidden book. The very act of suppression makes the words vibrate with a forbidden light. These books were the shadow side of human thought, the ideas that challenge the status quo. But in the quiet sanctuary of your sleep journey, the forbidden index is no longer a place of fear. It is simply a place of mystery. It reminds us that every library has its shadows, and every mind has its hidden rooms. You're safe now to explore those rooms. In the world of dreams, there is no censorship. You can open any door, read any secret, and look into any shadow, knowing that you are the architect of this library. And here, every word is permitted, every thought is welcome, and every hidden truth is a step toward wholeness. This sense of the hidden book often finds its way into the physical world through the modern movement of guerrilla libraries and books in the wild. Visualize a small wooden box shaped like a birdhouse, perched on a post in a quiet, leafy neighbourhood. Inside, there are no birds, but a rotating collection of paperbacks and hardcovers. This is a little free library. There is a profound serendipity to these structures. You don't go there looking for a specific title. You go there to see what the universe has provided. Or imagine the practice of book crossing, where a reader leaves a book on a park bench, a bus seat, or a stone wall in a forest with a small note inside. I am not lost. Read me and pass me on. A book in the wild is a traveller. It carries the scent of the homes it has visited and the fingerprints of the people who have loved it. It is a gesture of radical trust, a belief that stories should be free to roam. As you drift towards sleep, imagine yourself as a book left in a beautiful wild place, perhaps on a bed of soft moss beneath a giant oak tree. The stars are your reading lamp, and the wind is the hand that turns your pages. You're free from the shelf, you're free from the library, you're a wanderer in the vast open world of the imagination, moving from hand to hand, heart to heart in a continuous graceful journey. As you feel that freedom, that lightness of being in the wild, you may find that your breathing has become so quiet it is almost a whisper. The boundaries of your room are dissolving, replaced by the scent of night air and the soft rustle of leaves. You are drifting. You are travelling. Yes, the journey is the destination, and the destination is peace. The journey through the wild often leads to a landscape where the letters themselves begin to lose their rigid meaning and become pure form, a beautiful mystery known as asemic writing. Visualize a book like the Codex Seraphinianus. It looks like an encyclopedia from an alien world. The pages are filled with surreal illustrations of hybrid creatures and impossible machines, all described in a script that looks like a complex, elegant language. But it is a language that cannot be read. It has no alphabet, no grammar, no dictionary. This is writing without semantic content. It is the appearance of meaning. When you look at asemic writing, your analytical mind tries to decode it, but eventually it gives up. And in that giving up, something wonderful happens. You stop trying to understand and you start to feel. The lines, the loops and the flourishes becomes a visual dance, a symphony of ink that speaks directly to the subconscious. Asemic writing is the language of the dream. It is the way your mind speaks when the logic of the day has been switched off. As you fall deeper into sleep, don't worry if your thoughts don't make sense. They are becoming asemic. They are turning into beautiful, flowing shapes of meaning that transcend words. Let the ink of your thoughts swirl and dance on the page of the night, knowing that they are telling a story that is deeper than language. This fluidity of communication brings us to a historical perspective known as the Gutenberg parenthesis. This is the fascinating idea that the era of the printed book, from the 15th century to the late 20th, is just a small, temporary parenthesis in the much longer history of human communication. Before the book, we lived in an oral culture where knowledge was fluid, shared, and ever-changing through speech and song. Now, in the digital age, we're returning to a similar fluidity, where information is a stream that never stops. The printed book was a moment of fixity, a time when we tried to freeze thought in ink and hold it still on a shelf. Visualize this parenthesis as a pair of elegant curved lines in the sky of history. Inside the parenthesis is the solid, stable world of the library. Outside is the vast, moving ocean of the spoken word and the digital light. We are currently drifting toward the end of that second curve, but as you sleep, you're stepping outside the parenthesis altogether. You're returning to the ancient oral tradition of the soul, where stories are not fixed on pages, but are told in the rhythmic flow of the breath and the shifting light of the dream. You're moving back into the stream, back into the eternal conversation that has no beginning and no end. This eternal conversation was often protected in the ancient world not by iron locks, but by the power of the book curse. In a time when a single book could cost as much as a farm, the owners would write dire warnings on the first page to ward off thieves. Visualize a medieval manuscript where, in a dark, jagged hand, the scribe has written, "To him who steals this book, or takes it away, let it change into a serpent in his hand and rend him. Let him be struck with palsy, and all his members blasted. Let him languish in pain, crying aloud for mercy." These curses were the security systems of the soul. They turned the book into a living, vengeful entity that could defend itself. But there is a hidden gentleness in the curse. It shows just how much the book was loved. It was a treasure so precious that it was worth the risk of a soul's damnation. In your own inner library there are no curses, only blessings. Your stories are safe. Your memories are protected by a much more powerful force than an ancient spell, the absolute sanctuary of your own peace. You can let the guards of your mind go home for the night. The thieves of anxiety and the looters of tomorrow's chores cannot enter this space. The doors are sealed with silence, and the only thing that can touch your stories now is the soft, healing light of your own rest. And as that seal of silence settles over you, you feel a deep cellular sense of security. You're the most protected volume in the universe. No one can take this piece from you. It is yours. It is permanent. Yes, you're sinking into the absolute safety of the vault, where the light is low and the air is still. Finally, the journey of the book often involves a patient, silent wait that defies the human scale of time, the century-late return. There are records in libraries all over the world of books being returned 80, 90, or even 120 years after they were checked out. Visualize a dusty, leather-bound volume of history being dropped into a modern book return slot by the great-grandchild of the original borrower. The book has been away for a century. It has sat on different shelves, travelled through wars and witnessed the passing of entire generations, and yet, when it returns to the library, it is welcomed home. There is no anger, only a quiet re-entry into the system. The library is patient. It knows that all books eventually come home. It understands that the journey is sometimes long and the detours are many. This is the ultimate lesson of the book. Time is a different thing in the world of paper and ink. 100 years is just a long afternoon. As you approach the final threshold of sleep, let yourself be like that long-lost book. You've been out in the world all day, travelling through the noise and the light, but now you're returning. You're coming back to the great silent library of your rest. The slot is open. The shelves are waiting. You're being checked back into the peace that has been waiting for you all along. You're home. The journey is over, and the long, quiet story of your deep, restorative sleep is finally beginning to unfold. From the patient return of the century-old book, we drift toward the final horizons, where the ink disappears and the dream becomes the only reality. This disappearance of ink into the fabric of the dream leads us toward a book that has occupied the greatest minds of our time, yet remains entirely, beautifully silent. It is known as the Voynich manuscript. Visualize a volume of vellum. Its pages are soft, weathered cream, filled from edge to edge with a script that no human has ever been able to decipher. Beside the loops and curls of this unknown language are drawings of plants that do not exist in our botanical guides. Flowers with jagged, crystalline petals in shades of emerald and deep violet, and root systems that resemble tangled constellations. There are circular diagrams that look like celestial clocks, where tiny hand-painted figures bathe in emerald pools under stars that have no names in our astronomy. To look at the Voynich manuscript is to witness the absolute freedom of the imagination. It is a book that refuses to be known, a fortress of mystery that allows you to simply experience the beauty of the form without the burden of the meaning. It is a visual lullaby, an invitation to let go of the need for logic and instead sink into the pure rhythmic grace of the ink. As you drift, your own thoughts are beginning to resemble these beautiful, unreadable pages, a series of flowing, graceful shapes that carry you further away from the sharp edges of understanding and into the soft velvet mystery of the deep night. While the Voynich holds the secrets of a lost past, there is a forest in Norway, just north of Oslo, holding the secrets of a future we will never see. This is the Future Library Project. Imagine 1,000 Norwegian spruce trees. Their needles are dark, shimmering green, their roots reaching deep into the cool, damp earth. These trees were planted with a specific, patient purpose. In 100 years, they will be harvested to provide the paper for a collection of books that are being written today, but which will not be read until the year 2114. Every year, a celebrated author contributes a manuscript to this silent archive. These stories are held in a specially designed room of local wood, kept in total darkness and absolute stillness. There is a profound peace in this concept. the idea of a library that requires a century of growth before it can even be opened. It is a testament to the slow time of the forest. Visualize the sap rising in those trees, the rings of wood expanding 1 year at a time, each ring a silent page waiting for its ink. It reminds us that the most precious things require patience. You can feel that same slow, arboreal time moving through you now. You don't need to rush toward the morning. You have all the time in the world. You're growing toward your rest, one slow, steady breath at a time, rooted in the comfort of your bed, reaching toward the quiet stars. And as that sense of slow, forest time settles into your limbs, you may find that the weight of your body is becoming indistinguishable from the weight of the earth itself. Your breathing is a soft wind through the spruce needles. You are safe. You are growing. Yes, you're perfectly attuned to the rhythm of the seasons, and right now, it is the season of deep and effortless rest. The roots of those spruce trees drink from the earth, just as the hull of a unique vessel drinks from the cold, turquoise waters of the Norwegian fjords. This is the Bokbåten, or the book boat. For decades, a ship named the Epos has travelled the rugged coastline of Scandinavia, acting as a floating library for remote villages that have no roads. Visualize the Epos cutting through the mist of a grey morning, its hull a bright, cheerful red against the dark water. Inside, the walls are lined with thousands of volumes, held in place by wooden rails to protect them from the swaying of the sea. The scent here is a mixture of salt air, old paper, and wood smoke from the ship's small stove. To step onto the book boat is to feel the gentle, rhythmic rocking of the waves beneath your feet, a movement that turns the act of reading into a dance with the ocean. It is a sanctuary that moves, a library that brings the world to the isolated and the lonely. As you drift towards sleep, imagine you're on the Epos, tucked into a small warm bunk surrounded by books. The boat is swaying gently, lulling you with the ancient maternal rhythm of the sea. There is nowhere you need to go. The boat is carrying you, and the water is deep, and the stories are all around you, whispering their peace in time with the tide. This movement through the water mirrors an internal biological rhythm that connects the book to the very mechanism of life. It is a beautiful linguistic coincidence that some of the oldest creatures on Earth, the scorpions and the spiders, possess a breathing organ known as a book lung. Visualize these delicate internal structures. They consist of a series of thin, vascular plates, stacked together like the pages of a miniature volume. As the creature moves, air flows between these pages, allowing for the exchange of life-giving oxygen. It is as if nature itself decided that the most efficient way to breathe was to read the atmosphere. This anatomical echo reminds us that the book is not an artificial object, but a biological one. It is an organ of the human spirit. When you read, you are breathing in the thoughts of another. When you sleep, your mind is breathing through the pages of your memories. You can feel the soft expansion and contraction of your own book lungs now. The way your chest rises and falls, a steady, rhythmic turning of the invisible pages of your breath. It is a natural, effortless process that sustains you, a quiet library of air that keeps you safe and calm in the heart of the night. This biological breath requires space to move, a concept that the master typographers understood as the silence of the page. In the world of fine printing, the white space, the margins, the spaces between lines, and the gaps between words is just as important as the ink itself. Visualize a page of poetry where a single, beautiful line sits in the middle of a vast sea of white paper. The white space is not empty. It is a buffer of silence that protects the words from the noise of the world. It provides the room the mind needs to expand, to reflect, and to breathe. A page that is too crowded feels frantic and loud. A page with generous margins feels like a cathedral. It invites a slow, reverent reading. As you settle into your rest, imagine your consciousness as such a page. All the busy, crowded text of your day, the lists, the worries, the conversations, is being pushed back, leaving wide, beautiful margins of white silence. You're creating space for yourself. The ink of your thoughts is becoming sparse and elegant, surrounded by a vast, cooling landscape of stillness. You're not losing your story. You're simply giving it the room it needs to be understood. You are the white space. You are the silence. And in this silence, there is a profound and perfect peace. And as that silence expands within you, you may feel a lightness in your chest, a sense of liberation from the clutter of the day. Your mind is an open, sunlit room, and the air is clear and still. Yes. You're resting in the margins of the world, where the noise cannot reach you, and the only sound is the soft, rhythmic hush of your own existence. In the ultimate silence of the ocean floor, resting in the eternal dark of the North Atlantic, lies a book that was never meant to be read by human eyes again. It is known as the Great Omar. This was a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, bound in a way that defied all reason. Visualize a cover of midnight blue Morocco leather, encrusted with over 1,000 precious jewels, rubies, emeralds, and topazes, set in a design of 3 golden peacocks. The embroidery was done with threads of pure gold, and the end papers were made of the finest hand-painted silk. It was perhaps the most luxurious book ever created. It was placed on the Titanic for transport to America, and when the ship met the ice, the Great Omar sank into the abyss. Imagine the book now, resting on the silken silt of the seafloor 2 miles beneath the waves. The pressure is immense, the cold is absolute, and the darkness is total. The jewels still shimmer in the lightless deep, a secret treasure that belongs now to the ocean. There is a strange comfort in the thought of this book, a masterpiece of human craft that has returned to the elements, a silent, jeweled anchor in the heart of the deep. It reminds us that some stories are too beautiful for the world above. They belong to the silence. As you sink into your own deep rest, imagine yourself descending toward that same peaceful abyss. The pressure of the world is lifting, the light is fading. You're becoming a jeweled secret resting in the quiet, dark velvet of the night, where you are safe, untouchable, and infinitely at peace. While the Great Omar rests in the absolute dark, some books were designed to create their own light, a tradition of nocturnal editions that use luminous inks. Visualize a volume whose letters are not printed in black, but in a pale, phosphorescent pigment. In the daylight, the pages look empty, a blank and silent mystery. But when the sun goes down and the lamps are extinguished, the text begins to glow with a soft, ethereal light, a colour like the underside of a moonlit wave or the glow of a firefly. To read such a book is to participate in a miracle. The words emerge from the darkness, floating in the air before your eyes. They don't demand the harsh light of a candle, they provide their own illumination. This is the inner light of the story. It reminds us that even in our darkest moments, there is a source of light within us, a glowing text of resilience and peace that only reveals itself when the world is quiet. As you close your eyes, imagine the pages of your own inner book beginning to glow. The stories of your strength, the memories of your joy, and the promises of your rest are all shining with a soft phosphorescent light. You don't need to look for a lamp. You carry the light with you. It is a gentle, cooling glow that guides you through the shadows and leads you toward the beautiful, luminous landscapes of your dreams. And as that inner light warms your thoughts, you may notice that the darkness of your room no longer feels empty. It feels full of potential, like the blank page of a nocturnal edition waiting for the stars to come out. Your breathing is a steady, glowing pulse. Yes, you are your own light, and you are shining softly in the heart of the night. This inner light often illuminates the small, humble objects we leave behind between the pages, the accidental bookmarks that turn a book into a time capsule of a life. Think of the things that have been found in old books: a pressed 4-leaf clover, a theatre ticket from a play seen 40 years ago, a lock of hair tied with a blue ribbon, or a letter that was never mailed. These are not just placeholders, they are ghosts of the moment. Visualize a pressed violet, its petals turned to the colour of old smoke, flattened perfectly between two pages of poetry. It has been there for half a century, preserving the exact afternoon when it was plucked. To find such an object is to experience a sudden, sharp connection to the past. It is a tactile memory. These accidental bookmarks remind us that our lives are woven into the stories we read. Every book we hold absorbs a little bit of our heat, a little bit of our scent, and a little bit of our history. As you prepare for sleep, imagine all the small, beautiful moments of your day as bookmarks you're tucking into the pages of your life. A kind word, a warm cup of tea, the sight of a bird. These are the pressed flowers you're leaving behind. You don't need to hold on to them tightly. The book will keep them safe for you. You can let go of the day, knowing that its best moments are preserved in the quiet, leather-bound archive of your soul. Sometimes, these organic traces were not just accidental, they were the very substance of the book itself. In the early days of papermaking, the slurry was often thickened with wheat or rice starch, leading to a history of edible books. Visualize a time of famine or long sea voyages, where sailors or soldiers, having run out of food, would literally consume the pages of their books to stay alive. While it sounds desperate, there is a profound symbolic truth to the idea of eating the word. To read deeply is to digest an idea, to let it become part of your own blood and bone. In some traditions, students would write their lessons on slates with honey and then lick the honey off, literally tasting the sweetness of knowledge. Imagine a book made of thin, crisp sheets of rice paper, scented with vanilla and almond. To read it is to be nourished. This physical consumption of the word reminds us that knowledge is a form of sustenance. It is what feeds the spirit. As you drift towards sleep, imagine that the peaceful thoughts you are absorbing now are a form of spiritual honey. They are sweet, they are warm, and they are nourishing your soul. You are tasting the silence, letting it dissolve on your tongue and flow through your body, a gentle golden nectar that brings you strength and calm for the journey ahead. This physical consumption of the word leads us finally to the dream of a library that consumes the entire universe, a concept envisioned by Jorge Luis Borges in his Library of Babel. Visualize a library made of an infinite number of hexagonal rooms. Each room has 5 shelves on each of 4 walls, and every shelf holds 32 books of identical size. The library contains every possible combination of letters, every book that has ever been written, and every book that could ever be written. It contains the history of the future, the lost poems of the past, and the true story of your own life, hidden somewhere among the millions of volumes. The Library of Babel is the ultimate architecture of the mind. It is a maze of infinite possibility. But in the quiet centre of your sleep, the library is not a place of confusion. It is a place of total completion. If every story already exists, then there is no pressure to create, no pressure to achieve, and no pressure to find. You can simply exist. Imagine yourself sitting in one of those quiet hexagonal rooms. The walls are lined with books, the light is an eternal golden amber, and the silence is absolute. Everything that could ever be said is already here, resting on the shelves. You have nothing more to add. You can finally stop searching. You can close your eyes, lean your head against the cool, paper-lined wall, and let the infinite library of the universe hold you in its vast, silent, and perfect embrace. And as the infinite shelves fade into the soft grey mist of your final thoughts, you realize that you are the librarian of your own peace. The doors are closed, the lights are low, the universe is complete. Your breath is the final word of the final page. Yes, the library is at rest, and you are the silence between the books. You are the dream. You are the sleep. You are finally, perfectly, home. From the hexagonal halls of the infinite library, we move beyond the walls of the world, where the book dissolves into the starlight of a dream without end. This dissolving of the ink into the starlight of the dream leads us toward a colour that mirrors the very depth of the evening sky. In the 16th century, printers in Venice began to experiment with a paper that was not white or cream, but a deep, sombre blue. Visualize the Carta Azzurra. It was originally created for wrapping sugar or spice, but artists and printers soon realized its hypnotic power. When words are printed on blue paper, the contrast is softened. The white of the page no longer glares. Instead, the text appears to float in a sea of twilight. It is a restful paper, a paper that understands the fatigue of the eyes. To read a blue book is to read in the shade of a cool arbour, even in the heat of midday. The colour is that of the sky just before the first star appears, a deep, calming cyan that settles the pulse and invites a slow, meditative focus. This sense of peace often travels through the world on the slowest of feet. Imagine the mountains of Colombia, where the paths are narrow and the air is thin and cool. There is a sound of hooves against stone, a steady rhythmic clip-clop that echoes through the valley. This is the sound of Alpha and Beto, two donkeys carrying a library on their backs. Luis Soriano, a teacher with a vision of quiet grace, created the biblioburro to bring books to children in the most remote corners of the world. Visualize the books packed into wooden crates, swaying gently with the movement of the donkeys. It is a slow, living library that moves at the speed of nature. There is no rush to return these books. The due date is simply the next time the hooves are heard in the distance. This is the ultimate slow delivery, a reminder that the most meaningful stories arrive at their own pace, carried by the breath of the mountains and the steady heart of a traveller. And as those slow hooves echo in your mind, you may find that your own pace has slowed to match them. There is no need to hurry toward the end of the story. Your heart is a steady rhythmic beat, carrying you deeper into the quiet landscape of your rest. Yes. The mountain air is cool, and you're exactly where you need to be. As those small donkeys navigate the narrow trails, we contrast their scale with a volume that requires the strength of several men just to lift. This is the Klenker Atlas, one of the largest books in the world. Visualize a book that stands nearly 6 feet tall. When it's opened, it spans 7 feet across. It is not a book of words, but a book of worlds, a collection of 39 massive maps. To read this atlas is to walk upon the earth itself. You do not turn the pages with your fingers, you lift them with your entire arms, a physical act of unfolding the planet. The maps are hand-painted in vibrant golds, greens and blues, showing the intricate coastlines and the vast empty spaces of the 17th century world. Standing before this open atlas is like standing at the edge of a great cliff, looking out over the horizon of human knowledge. It is a book of immense gravity, a massive anchor of information that holds the world still, allowing you to trace the edges of continents while you remain perfectly stationary in the quiet of the room. While the atlas is a monument of weight, there is a texture from the ancient East that is as light as a sigh. Before the widespread use of wood pulp or cotton rags, the master paper makers of China discovered a way to create paper from the scraps of silk. Imagine a material that is not quite paper and not quite fabric. It is thin, translucent, and has a shimmering, pearlescent quality. When you touch silk paper, your fingers encounter a surface that is incredibly smooth, yet warm and strangely resonant. It does not crackle when folded. It makes a soft, silk-like rustle, the sound of a secret being passed from hand to hand. This was the paper of poets and emperors, a surface so precious that only the most beautiful thoughts were permitted to rest upon it. To write on silk paper is to write on the air itself. As you drift, imagine your own thoughts are being recorded on this ancient silken surface, delicate, weightless, and infinitely soft, fluttering gently in the breeze of your breath. And as you feel that silken texture in your imagination, you may notice that your own body feels lighter, as if the gravity of the day has been replaced by a soft, lifting air. Your thoughts are weightless now, drifting like silk threads in a quiet room. Yes, you're floating, perfectly supported by the stillness, moving toward the deep, soft centre of your rest. This softness of the silk leads us to the concept of the book's second skin, the dust jacket. In the early 19th century, these were not meant to be permanent. They were simple pieces of plain paper wrapped around a book to protect its expensive leather or cloth binding during its journey from the bookshop to the home. They were called wrappers, intended to be discarded like the skin of a fruit once the treasure inside was revealed. But then, artists began to realise the potential of this temporary skin. They started to decorate it with illustrations and typography, creating a veil of mystery. The dust jacket is a promise. It is the clothes the book wears in public. But beneath the jacket lies the true book, the naked binding that feels more honest and tactile in the hand. Imagine the act of undressing a book, removing the crisp, glossy paper to reveal the deep, embossed cloth beneath. It is an act of intimacy, a signal that you are settling in for a long stay. The jacket is for the world, the binding is for you. As you prepare for sleep, you are removing your own dust jacket, the outer layers of your public self, the roles you play, the things you do. You're revealing the quiet, steady binding of your true self, a self that is soft, resilient, and ready for the stillness. This reveals a depth of patience that can be found in the charred remains of the Villa of the Papyri in Herculaneum. When Mount Vesuvius erupted, it did not just destroy, it preserved. It buried a library of thousands of scrolls in hot ash, carbonizing them instantly. For centuries, these scrolls looked like nothing more than lumps of coal, brittle, black, and seemingly lost forever. To touch them was to destroy them. But now, using CT scans and artificial intelligence, we're beginning to read them without ever unrolling them. Visualize the X-rays passing through the black, charred layers of the scroll, picking up the tiny, microscopic traces of lead in the ink. On a screen in a quiet laboratory, the ancient Greek letters are emerging from the darkness like stars appearing at dusk. It is a digital resurrection. These books have been waiting in a state of suspended animation for 2,000 years. They are the ultimate symbols of survival. They teach us that even when something looks destroyed, the essence remains, waiting for the right kind of light to be seen again. You can feel that same sense of deep, indestructible preservation within yourself. No matter how much ash the day has piled upon you, the core of your piece is still there, carbonized and strong, waiting in the quiet dark for the light of sleep to reveal its beauty. And as those ancient letters emerge from the dark, you may feel a similar clarity emerging within your own mind. The noise of the day is fading, and the essential truths of your piece are becoming visible. Your breathing is a steady, quiet pulse, the only clock in a room that has no time. Yes, you're safe in the dark, and the light of the dream is just beginning to shine. The light that reveals these secrets is the same light that created the world's first photographically illustrated book. Imagine Anna Atkins, a botanist in the 1840s, standing in the sunlight with sheets of paper treated with iron salts. She would place a single, delicate piece of seaweed onto the paper and leave it in the sun. The light would turn the exposed paper a deep Prussian blue, while the area beneath the seaweed remained a ghostly crystalline white. These are cyanotypes. To look at her book is to look at a library of shadows. There is no ink here, only the action of light and time. The images are ethereal, appearing like memories of the ocean frozen in blue ice. It is a book made by the sun itself. As you drift, imagine your own memories are becoming cyanotypes, gentle, blue-tinted silhouettes of your day, where only the most beautiful shapes remain, and everything else has been washed away by the light. This transformation of light and labour leads us toward the architecture of the book itself as a place of vertical rest. In some of the world's most beautiful libraries, books are not just shelved, they are built into towers that reach toward the ceiling like the trunks of giant trees. Imagine a spiral staircase made of dark oak, winding its way up a wall of 20,000 books. The air becomes cooler as you climb, and the silence becomes more profound. These book towers are the skyscrapers of the imagination. They represent the verticality of human thought, our desire to reach higher and higher toward the light of understanding. But even a tower must have a base. As you stand at the bottom of the tower in your mind, look up at the thousands of spines, each one a different colour, each one a different life. They're all leaning together, supporting one another in a state of perfect, upright rest. You don't need to climb the tower tonight. You can simply lie at its base, protected by its height, sheltered by its weight, and let the vertical silence of the books pull you down into the deep horizontal peace of your bed. The vertical silence of the tower eventually gives way to the flickering communal warmth of the ways goose, the traditional annual feast given by a master printer to his workmen. It took place on St. Bartholomew's Day in late August, marking the point in the year when the printers would begin to work by candlelight for the coming winter. Visualize a long wooden table in a room that smells of ink and roasted goose. The windows are open to the summer evening, and the first candles of the season are being lit, their flames flickering in the warm breeze. It is a celebration of the transition from the light to the dark. It is a moment of collective rest before the hard work of the winter begins. The ways goose is a reminder that every cycle of labour must end in a feast of gratitude and a surrender to the coming darkness. Your ways goose is happening now. You have finished your work. The candles of your consciousness are being lit, illuminating a table of quiet thoughts and peaceful reflections. You're ready for the winter of the night. You're ready to close the doors of the shop, blow out the light, and sink into the long, warm and beautiful darkness that waits for you. As the final candle is extinguished, we encounter the ghost pages, those 3 or 4 blank sheets of paper that are often found at the very end of a book. In the world of publishing, these are the results of the signatures, the large sheets of paper that are folded to create the sections of the book. Often, there are more pages than there is text, leaving these beautiful white spaces at the end of the journey. These are the resting pages. They are the buffer between the end of the story and the back cover. They provide the reader with a place to linger, a place to think, and a place to slowly return to the world. Imagine your own mind is now entering these ghost pages. The text of your life has finished for today. The plot has reached its conclusion. There are no more words to read. You're moving into the white, silent, and empty space at the end of the volume. It is a space of pure potential, a space where nothing is required of you, a space of absolute and perfect blankness. And as you settle into that white blank space, you may find that the room around you has completely disappeared. There is no ceiling, no floor, and no walls. There is only the soft, infinite whiteness of the final pages. Your breathing is the only thing that remains, a slow and steady tide in a sea of silence. Yes, you're at the end of the book. You're at the end of the day. You're at the beginning of the dream. From the flickering candles of the printer's feast and the silent expanse of the ghost pages, we move toward the final 10 truths, where the book itself dissolves into the absolute and eternal silence of the night. This final, shimmering horizon leads us to the most profound secret of all, a truth that resides not in the ink, the leather, or the centuries of dust, but in the very space between the letters and your own beating heart. This is the phenomenon of the invisible text. Visualize, if you can, a book that has been read by 1,000 different people. While the black ink remains fixed and frozen upon the page, the book itself is never the same twice. Every time you open a volume, you are bringing to it the unique landscape of your own life, your memories, your sorrows, your secret joys, and the specific quality of the light in your room at that exact moment. The final secret of the library is that a book is not a finished object. It is a collaborative performance. The author provides the sheet music, but you, the reader, are the symphony. When you read a sentence about a cool breeze, it is your memory of a breeze that cools the page. When a character feels hope, it is your history of hope that gives the word its weight. In this way, every book in the world contains a hidden, invisible layer of ink written by you. You are the ghost in the machine of the narrative, You are the silent architect of every castle described in these stories. This means that no book is ever truly closed. A part of your spirit remains entwined in the fibres of every page you have ever touched, and a part of every story you have ever loved now flows through your very blood. You are a living library, a walking archive of every sunset, every heartbreak, and every triumph you have ever encountered in the world of paper and ink. You are the 101st wonder, the ultimate vessel where the story finally comes to life, and where it finally finds its rest. And as this final truth settles into the deep, warm archives of your mind, you may find that the need for words has begun to dissolve. The library is not a place you visit anymore, it is the place where you are. Your breathing has become a slow, rhythmic whisper, the sound of a soft wind moving through an infinite corridor of silent books. Yes, the day is fully written. The ink is dry. The covers are closing. Feel the weight of the quilt against your skin, as heavy and as comforting as the fine leather binding of a cherished volume. The room is dark now, a perfect indigo vault, and the only light that remains is the soft fading glow of your own peaceful thoughts. One by one, the lamps in the long galleries of your mind are being extinguished. Hear the heavy oak doors of the great library swinging shut with a distant, muffled thud, a sound of absolute security and finality. The curators have gone home, the scholars are asleep, the stars are the only sentinels left, watching over the silent shelves of your consciousness. You are drifting, moving away from the structure of facts and toward the fluid, shimmering textures of pure rest. There are no more details to visualize. There are no more patterns to trace. Your thoughts are like the tiny dust motes we saw at the beginning, weightless, golden, and suspended in a beam of eternal stillness. You are sinking into the deep, soft vellum of the night. Every muscle in your body is a loose, unstrung thread, resting in the quiet dark. The story is complete. The circle is closed. The silence is perfect. Slowly, deeply, you are letting go. And now, 101 wonders are resting with you. Sleep now. Good night.